The thin, middle-aged supervisor stared at us with cold, calculating eyes. He wanted to know how many of us had actually survived the initial trial. A fat man nearby wiped sweat from his forehead and forced a smile. He told the man that 5,000 of us had made it through. The supervisor froze. He looked shocked. 5,000 was a massive number, far more than usually survived. He grabbed the fat man's arm, then tested a few others, checking our vitals. He muttered to himself about how it was impossible for so many to be qualified. The crowd grew uneasy. It felt like he was disappointed that more of us hadn't died. I stood in the middle of the group, keeping my expression neutral. I had a feeling I knew why so many survived. When I was practicing that modified version of the oxygen breathing technique, I felt it affecting the air around me. I might have accidentally kept the others alive. Luckily, the supervisor didn't check everyone. He eventually gave up and started handing out identity tokens. We were officially gravekeepers now. He explained our new lives. The job was simple on paper. We had to look after the Brahma Sword Tomb, a forbidden area of the Sword Demon sect. We were tasked with cleaning the swords, pulling weeds, and maintaining the graves. We were only in the outer perimeter, where the common disciples were buried. He didn't say who was buried in the inner depths, but it was clear we weren't allowed anywhere near there. For our trouble, we would get 2 low-grade spirit stones a month and 1 chance to leave the mountain. But leaving didn't mean freedom. If we tried to run, the sect would hunt us down. Then, the supervisor, a man named Wei, gave us a twisted smile. He told us that if we managed to stay alive for 6 months, we could participate in the outer disciple test. The crowd got excited. No one wanted to be a gravekeeper forever, but his words bothered me. Why did he say if we stayed alive? Was cleaning graves really that dangerous? He told us our tokens would track our progress. We had to clean 10 swords a month to stay qualified. That was only 1 sword every 3 days. Everyone thought it sounded like a dream job. They thought it would be easy. They were wrong. An hour later, we found out the catch. One guy was so eager to start that he ran up to a sword on a nearby mound. The moment his fingers brushed the rusted metal, his body hit a breaking point. He didn't even have time to scream. He exploded instantly, turning into a pile of gray ash right before our eyes. We all backed away, trembling. Supervisor Wei just laughed. He told us he forgot to mention the sword chi. Every grave was packed with it. If we didn't use the oxygen breathing technique to protect our bodies while we worked, we were dead men. Then, he turned and walked away, leaving us to our fate. The silence was heavy. Finally, one brave soul stepped forward. He pushed his cultivation to the limit and touched a small, unassuming sword. He lasted about 10 seconds before he had to rip his hand away and collapse. He was pale and gasping for air. He told us the sword chi had drained every drop of his spiritual energy. If he had stayed a second longer, he would have ended up as ash too. That was the reality. We needed more spiritual power just to survive the workday. Everyone immediately sat down and started cultivating like their lives depended on it. Because they did. I didn't join them. I waited until I was out of their sight and wandered deeper into the rows of graves. I needed to test something. I picked a random sword and took a deep breath. I activated my technique and stepped into the wards surrounding the grave. The sword chi bit at my skin like ice, but my spiritual energy wrapped around it, neutralizing the sting. I didn't hesitate. I reached out and gripped the hilt. The moment my palm touched the cold metal, a violent surge of energy roared into my arm. My vision blurred. Suddenly, images started flashing through my mind like a movie. I saw a young boy named Chen Fan. He was an orphan, starving on the streets until a manager from the Sword Demon sect found him. I watched his entire life unfold. I saw his decades of training, his battles, and his mastery of a technique called the falling leaf sword style. I saw his final moments when he was cut down by those who called themselves righteous cultivators. It was incredible. Chen Fan's life experiences were pouring into me. Specifically, his sword skills. My body began to move on its own, mimicking the movements I saw in my head. I swung an invisible blade, feeling the lonely, desolate power of the falling leaves. When the vision finally faded, I was standing there, breathless. I looked at my hands in shock. My max-level comprehension had triggered. Just by touching the sword, I had completely mastered a high-grade sword technique. But that wasn't all. I felt a new strand of sword chi settling into my dantian. It wasn't aggressive anymore. It felt warm. It felt friendly. Even the sword in my hand stopped resisting me. It vibrated slightly, letting out a soft hum. It was responding to me. It was as if the blade itself was glad to be remembered. It was true. My max level comprehension was working. I glanced at the Gravedigger token hanging from my waist. The number on it was still 0. After I finished tidying up the sword and wiped the blade clean, the number finally flickered and changed to 1. I couldn't help but sigh. The anti-cheat mechanism on this token was actually pretty solid. 3 days passed. The 100 or so people who had entered the sword tomb with me were all buried in their cultivation. They tried to clean the sword seeds like I did, but they all failed. Their spiritual energy levels were just too low to handle the residual sword chi. I, on the other hand, had been busy. I had touched over 20 swords. From them, I mastered nearly 10 different sword techniques and absorbed over 20 strands of powerful sword chi into my body. But the biggest gain wasn't the skills or the energy. It was the knowledge. I finally understood the cultivation levels of this world. It started with the chi refining realm, followed by the spirit gathering realm, the sea wheel realm, and finally the mysterious core realm. Each realm had 9 levels. In a place like the Sword Demon Sect, the strongest experts were only at the mysterious core realm. I realized something else too. After my first day of practice, I had already reached the first level of the chi refining realm. Entering the first rank in a single day was considered the mark of a genius. But technically, I had only practiced for less than an hour. What did that make me? It baffled me. If my talent was this good, why did the initial test label me as trash? Maybe it was because I had crossed over in my original body. Regardless, once I knew I had reached the first level, I stopped practicing. I didn't want to cause a scene or attract unwanted trouble. It was better to keep a low profile. This was the Sword Demon Sect, after all. Anything could happen. One afternoon, I went to the Sword Pavilion to ask about the monthly leave. They told me I had to finish my monthly task first. I needed to clean 10 sword seeds to earn a few days of freedom. For me, that was easy. But for the others, cleaning even 1 was impossible. Would finishing 10 so quickly make me stand out too much? I decided not to worry about it yet. I spent the next few days touching swords, absorbing chi, and contemplating life. My understanding of the sword grew deeper with every passing hour. Eventually, I hit a limit. Once I had 100 strands of sword chi in my body, I couldn't take in any more. My level was too low to hold the volume. I needed to break through. By the 9th day, someone else finally reached the first level of chi refining and successfully cleaned a sword seed. The others were green with envy. Usually, it took a disciple 3 to 5 days to reach that level. This guy took 9, which showed his talent was mediocre at best. But before they could even finish being jealous of him, a shocking piece of news hit the camp the next morning. A young man named Ling Xiao had finished his entire monthly quota in a single morning. Who the hell is Ling Xiao? People whispered. I've never heard of him. He's that loner guy, someone replied. The one who doesn't talk to anyone. I think that's him. It has to be. He must have reached the first level days before Boss Xiao. That's why he finished so fast. I heard he already applied for leave and left the mountain. Is he trying to run away? No way. The sect is full of experts. He wouldn't make it 10 steps before getting cut down. While they were gossiping, I was already gone. Dressed in my gray servant robes, I left the sword tomb behind. I wasn't running away. I just needed a quiet place to cultivate without holding back. I had been suppressed for so long. I finally wanted to see what I could do. After walking for half an hour into the outskirts of the monster beast forest, I made sure no one was around. I found a hidden spot by a large tree, sat down cross-legged, and activated my custom version of the oxygen mantra. The spiritual energy in the air went wild. It rushed toward me like it had finally found an exit. With my eyes closed, I could see the energy floating around me like a sea of stars. I pulled it all in. A massive spiritual cyclone formed around me, expanding rapidly. Half an hour later, my body shuddered. Level 2 of the Chi refining realm. An hour later, level 3. The energy and sword chi swirled inside me, expanding my meridians. With my max level comprehension, there were no bottlenecks. I just kept breaking through. Being a complete novice to this world, I didn't realize that a spiritual cyclone like this only happened in two situations: when someone was breaking through a major realm or when a rare treasure appeared. The cyclone above my head didn't dissipate. Since my cultivation was low, I didn't give off a powerful pressure. To anyone watching, it looked exactly like a treasure was about to be born. I had been practicing for over 2 hours when a giant green python slithered toward me. Its eyes were cold and greedy. It looked at me with confusion. Why was there a human here? Where was the treasure? I felt a chill and snapped my eyes open. My pupils constricted. A green demon python. It was a mid-tier beast, equivalent to a human in the spirit-gathering realm. It was venomous, fast, and incredibly strong. Even a group of human cultivators at the same level would struggle to kill it. To a chi-refining ant like me, I should have been nothing but a snack. The python flicked its black tongue, staring me down. It didn't care if I was a human or a treasure, it just wanted to eat. It paused, seemingly confused. Usually, a human at my level would be paralyzed with fear. I was scared for a split second, but then I felt a surge of excitement. I wanted to test myself. The python roared and lunged, its massive jaws open wide. When it was only 2 meters away, I moved. Cut! I hissed. I flicked 2 fingers of my right hand forward. A tiny 3-inch-long strand of sword chi erupted from my fingertips. It looked miniature, almost delicate, but it carried a deadly chill. The moment the green demon python saw that strand of sword chi, horror filled its cold eyes. Its animal instincts screamed at it that this wasn't something it could fight. Without a second of hesitation, it whipped its body around, trying to flee into the brush. But my sword chi was too fast. Before the beast could even fully turn, the light reached it. The python's massive body froze mid-motion. A thin red line appeared, extending from its head all the way down to its tail. In a heartbeat, its life force vanished. With a wet, sliding sound, the corpse split perfectly into 2 halves and collapsed onto the forest floor. I looked at the mess and allowed myself a small smile. Not bad, I whispered. I had only pulled a single strand of sword chi from my body on a whim, yet the power was staggering. I started with 100 strands in my dantian, and now I had 99 left. I didn't feel a hint of regret about using it. In the Brahma sword tomb, there was an almost infinite supply of sword chi waiting for me. Even if I used all 100, I could just walk back and refill them in minutes. I quickly processed the python's body, taking the valuable parts, and sat back down to continue my cultivation. By the time the sun began to dip, I had pushed my cultivation all the way to the 7th level of the chi refining realm. I could feel the progress slowing down, though. My modified breathtaking technique was good, but its foundation was limited. I knew I'd eventually need to find a high-grade cultivation manual to keep this pace up. If anyone else heard my complaints, they would probably spit blood in rage. Going from the 1st level to the 7th in a single day was unheard of. For a normal cultivator, that journey would take at least a year or 2 of grueling work. I stood up and twisted my neck, hearing a satisfying series of cracks. I felt overflowing with strength. I turned and threw a casual punch at a massive tree nearby, one so thick it would take 5 men to circle it. The tree shook violently, showering me in dead leaves. A deep fist imprint was left in the bark. That single punch had at least 2,000 pounds of force behind it. Back on Earth, I would have been a literal Superman. But I knew that in this fantasy world, 2,000 pounds of force still made me little more than an ant. I shook my head, clearing my thoughts. Dusk was falling, and the forest grew dark. I didn't want to spend the night in a place filled with predators. I gathered the materials from the various beasts I'd killed throughout the afternoon. Besides the python, a few other mid-tier monsters had been drawn to the commotion. Every single one of them had been dealt with by a single flick of my fingers. It was clean, efficient, and incredibly easy. When I got back to the sect, I sold the beast parts for over 20 low-grade spirit stones. That was more than a gravekeeper earned in an entire year. The Sword Demon sect had a library pavilion filled with countless manuals, but the threshold for entry was being an official outer disciple. As a gravekeeper, my status was no better than a lowly servant. I had no right to enter. I'd have to wait for the outer disciple entrance test in 6 months. If I performed well enough, I could aim for a position in the sword pavilion within the Brahma sword tomb. That would grant me the same status as an outer disciple. I tucked my stones away and headed back into the restricted area. As I approached the barrier, my Gravekeeper's token flashed, allowing me to pass through without resistance. "Hey, the Poison Man is back," one of the other Gravekeepers whispered as I walked by. "Of course he is. Where else would he go? Leaving is a death sentence. I wonder what he was doing out there. I'm so jealous. He already finished his cleaning tasks. I can't even finish one sword tomb without feeling like I'm dying." I ignored their chatter. I had work to do. I had used nearly 20 strands of sword chi during my trip, and I needed to replenish them. More importantly, I wanted to see how many strands I could hold now that I was at the 7th level. I moved away from the others and began wandering the outer perimeter of the Brahma sword tomb. There were tens of thousands of swords here, varying in size and power. I didn't have to worry about running out. I also noticed that even after I drained a sword, it would slowly regenerate its chi over time. It truly was an inexhaustible goldmine. As I touched sword after sword, fragments of their former owner's memories flooded my mind. The older the sword, the more fragmented the memories were. But for the newer ones, I could see their stories clearly. You have comprehended the Earth Grade Sword Skill, Mysterious Fire Sword Technique. You have comprehended the Earth Grade Sword Skill, 5 Elements Sword Script. You have comprehended the Earth Grade Sword Skill, Phantom Sword Technique. Over the next 20 days, I absorbed over 900 strands of sword chi and learned 40 different sword techniques. The strongest was a mid-level Earth Grade skill called the Heavenly Bright Sword Technique. During the quiet hours of the night, I focused entirely on my cultivation. Finally, I broke through to the 9th level of the chi refining realm. The other Gravekeepers who had arrived with me were struggling. The strongest among them was only at the 2nd level, and most hadn't even reached the 1st. One afternoon, I picked a random sword and reached out. Touch, watch, comprehend, absorb. Sweat beaded on my forehead. I could feel I was reaching my limit. After a few long breaths, the 998th strand of sword chi settled into my body. I decided to strike while the iron was hot. I reached for the very next sword. Boom. The chi surged into me, causing every other strand in my body to tremble. I gritted my teeth, focusing every ounce of my will to control the influx. My clothes were soaked with sweat by the time I finished. The 999th strand was in, but I felt a strange, nagging sensation. I was one short. Just one more. I frowned, hesitating for the first time. I felt completely full, like a balloon stretched to its absolute limit. Even that last strand had barely fit. If I tried to take one more, would I just explode? Leaving that last strand behind felt wrong. I stood there, hesitating, my mind racing. I knew the risks. High risk usually meant high reward, and in this world, that was the only way to get ahead. I took a deep breath and decided to go for it. I trusted my gut and picked a nearby sword. I touched it. The memories flooded in. I grasped the technique. Then, I reached for the 1000th strand of sword chi. The moment it entered my body, everything exploded. A massive roar echoed in my ears. 1,000 strands of chi began to vibrate in unison. They swirled together, spinning at a terrifying speed. They were merging, melting, and compressing into something new. My improved breathing technique kicked into overdrive. A surge of pure, raw power tore through my meridians. It felt like my veins were being scrubbed clean, forcing open every blocked pathway in my body. I gritted my teeth, refusing to make a sound despite the agony. Then, my body jolted. My dantian felt like it was expanding into an entire world, pulling in spiritual energy from every direction. It wasn't just happening inside me. Outside, the entire area was trembling. Thousands of swords in the graves around me began to hum and rattle. A massive vortex of air formed 100 meters above my head, churning the clouds. The night sky rippled like a disturbed pond. I realized I couldn't hide this. But then I remembered, I was deep inside the forbidden grounds. The sect outside wouldn't see this chaos. What's happening? I heard voices in the distance. The other new gravekeepers were terrified. They saw the swords shaking and the sky twisting. Some wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. They stayed frozen, paralyzed by fear. Suddenly, a figure blurred through the graveyard toward my location. It was Supervisor Wei. He looked stunned. He didn't know exactly what was happening, But he knew that thousands of swords reacting like this meant something massive was unfolding. He thought he might have stumbled upon a legendary treasure. By the time he reached the spot, I was already gone. I had moved fast. The vortex had vanished, and the sky had settled. Wei looked around, confused and disappointed. There was no treasure on the ground. Then, he stopped near a sword and closed his eyes. His face went pale. He realized it wasn't a treasure. Someone had manifested a sword intent. In our world, sword intent is the mark of a master. Even geniuses usually don't touch that level until they are far beyond my current rank. Wei was at the peak of the spirit-gathering realm, and even he hadn't touched the edge of it. Another supervisor arrived, breathless. Did a treasure appear? No, Wei whispered. A senior was here. They just refined their sword intent. They both sat down immediately. Even the lingering traces of that intent were enough to help their cultivation. They didn't want to waste a single second. Meanwhile, I was sprinting through the graveyard. I took a long, looping path back to my hut to shake any followers. I still couldn't believe it. I had actually done it. 1,000 strands had fused into a single, genuine sword intent. That wasn't all. The breakthrough had pushed me right out of the chi refining realm. I was now at the first level of the spirit-gathering realm. I felt the sword intent sitting in my dantian. It felt sharp, lethal, and completely mine. The techniques I'd absorbed before were powerful, but they were borrowed. This was different. This was my foundation. I didn't know how strong it was yet, but I knew I had a real trump card now. I finally reached my small hut. It was just a tiny shack, but it was home. I stepped inside, ready to collapse and rest. My skin crawled. Every hair on my neck stood up. There was someone in my room. It wasn't a girl. It was an old man with gray hair wearing a white robe. My first instinct was to bolt, but I couldn't move. It felt like a mountain had been dropped onto my shoulders. The pressure was suffocating. "Don't run," a raspy voice said. "I mean no harm." I recognized that voice. It was the same one that had welcomed us to the graves and taught us the breathing technique. The man Elder Chun called Old Gung. I felt completely helpless. Against a real power like this, I was just an ant. He took a single step and appeared right next to me. He placed a hand on my shoulder, and I felt his energy surge into my body to inspect me. "Would you like the summary of the next chapter?" I felt his energy surge through my veins, cold and invasive. He was checking my body for damage, searching for signs that the sword chi had torn me apart from the inside. But there was nothing. Even though I was only at the first level of the spirit-gathering realm, I had actually condensed a genuine sword intent. "A bit flawed," Old Gung muttered, his eyes wide with genuine surprise. "But such talent is rare indeed." He pulled his hand back and looked at me deeply. The crushing pressure vanished instantly. I could move again, but I didn't dare run. I knew how powerful this man was. One wrong move, and I'd be dead before I hit the floor. I bowed low, showing him the respect he deserved. "Greetings, Elder Gung." It wasn't just fear. He was the one who taught us the breathing technique that allowed me to survive this long. In a way, he was my first teacher. He didn't waste time with small talk. He reached into his robe and handed me 3 items. "This is a spirit returning pill. It will help you stabilize your cultivation. And these 2 jade tokens will grant you access to the hidden pavilion to choose 2 techniques." I stared at the items in my palm, stunned. A spirit returning pill was a high-grade medicine for spirit-gathering cultivators. A single one cost 200 low-grade spirit stones. And those tokens? Usually, only outer disciples could get those by trading in thousands of contribution points. For someone like me who had just broken through, this was a godsend. "Elder Gung, why are you?" I looked up to ask him why he was helping me, but the room was empty. He was gone. Only his voice lingered in the air, echoing in my ears. "When the outer disciple trials are over, come find me at the Sword Pavilion. And remember, little guy, in our Sword Devil sect, if you have talent, show it. There is no need to hide." I stood there for a long time, processing his words. As a guy from the modern world, I understood exactly what was happening. This was an investment. He saw my potential and wanted to be the one to back me. I wasn't going to refuse. I needed every advantage I could get. I had a strange feeling about the Sword Devil sect. They were definitely a demonic sect. You don't kidnap 10,000 people unless you're the bad guys. But in this world, the strong eat the weak. If I wanted to survive, I had to become one of the predators. I swallowed the spirit-returning pill. It dissolved instantly, sending a surge of pure, violent energy through my limbs. I sat down and began to circulate my cultivation. By dawn, my foundation was rock solid. The efficiency was incredible. I stepped out of my hut as the sun began to rise. One thing bothered me, though. Old Gung said my sword intent was flawed. What did that mean? Was it because I used 1,000 different strands of chi to make it? I had absorbed thousands of memories, but they all belonged to ordinary disciples. None of them had ever reached this level. I was flying blind. I started running toward the sword tombs, my body feeling lighter than ever. I was moving at incredible speeds, even without a movement technique. If I could find a good speed manual at the hidden pavilion, I'd be unstoppable. I reached the first tomb and went through my routine. Touch the sword, absorb the memory, take the chi. But something changed. As soon as the sword chi entered my body, my own sword intent lunged forward like a hungry predator and swallowed it whole. I tried another tomb. Same thing. My sword intent was hungry. It felt slightly sharper, slightly stronger with every strand it consumed. You want to eat? I whispered. Fine. Let's see how much you can handle. For the next few days, I stayed on the outskirts of the tombs. I absorbed 10, 50, then 200 strands. My sword intent finally hit a limit after 500. It wasn't that it couldn't hold more, but my own understanding of swordplay was too shallow. I was hitting a ceiling because the memories I was absorbing were from weak, low-level disciples. To get stronger, I needed better quality food. I checked my Gravekeeper token. I had already finished my monthly quota in just a few days. The other new Gravekeepers watched me leave the area with eyes full of envy. Last month, most of them failed their tasks and lost half their pay. Now, while they were struggling to survive, I was already done. The gap between us was becoming an abyss. I didn't head to the monster forest yet. I had a debt to collect. I headed straight for the hidden pavilion to cash in Old Gung's investment. I was tired of just breathing and swinging. It was time to learn how to actually fight. I reached the massive doors of the hidden pavilion, ready to see what the Sword Devil sect really had to offer. A white-haired old man leaned against the entrance of the hidden pavilion, looking half asleep and completely drained of energy. I didn't let his appearance fool me. Would the Sword Devil sect really let a random, senile old man guard a place this important? Not a chance. In my world, the guy sweeping the floors was always the secret master. I walked up to him and bowed respectfully. I told him I was there to choose a cultivation technique and a weapon. He squinted at me, his eyes flickering with a hint of a smile. He called me an interesting kid, noting my status as a lowly spirit gathering realm laborer, and asked for my token. I handed over the 2 jade tokens Old Gung had given me. The old man glanced at them, and for a split second, his eyes sharpened with a terrifying light. He sat bolt upright, all traces of sleepiness gone. He asked me who gave me the Sword Pavilion token. I told him the truth. It was a gift from Elder Gung. He muttered something about that old immortal being up to something again, then waved me off. He told me to skip the first floor and head straight to the third. I thanked him and stepped inside. The hidden pavilion had 4 floors. The first 2 held basic human and earth rank techniques, but the third floor was reserved for the elite. Important manuals that required massive contribution points or high-level connections to access. As for the 4th floor, even in the vast memories I'd absorbed from the tombs, no one had ever been up there. As I climbed the stairs, the old man outside watched me go, whispering to himself about a nameless sword body and how my natural talent was unfortunately mediocre. He didn't know about my cheat. I reached the 3rd floor and started browsing the shelves. I recognized a few earth-rank techniques immediately because I'd already absorbed fragments of them from the sword chi in the graves. There was the Xianxin True Sense, a cultivation method with high growth potential, and the Asura Palm, a brutal technique said to be capable of leveling mountains. But I wasn't looking for raw power yet. I needed to fix my weaknesses. My understanding of the sword was growing, but I was slow and my body was fragile. If I couldn't outrun an enemy, I needed to be able to take a hit. After searching for hours, I made my choice. First, an earth-rank movement technique called Shifting Phantom. It was the top-tier speed skill on this floor. Second, a human-rank peak body refining technique called the mountain crushing seal. There were earth-rank body skills available, but they were mostly for support. This one was different. It focused entirely on raw physical strength and durability. With the manuals in hand, I left the pavilion and headed straight for the monster forest. I had finished my quota at the graves, so there was no point in going back yet. I needed real combat to digest what I'd learned. I pushed deep into the forest, bypassing the weak outer beasts. I didn't stop until I was 10 miles in, where the monsters were at the late stages of the spirit-gathering realm. Without using my sword intent, this was the perfect level of pressure. I unsheathed a basic iron sword I'd bought for 2 spirit stones. I was broke. I only had about 30 stones to my name, and a truly good sword cost thousands. I'd have to make do. Suddenly, a wolf-like beast lunged from the brush. Its claws tore through my chest, ripping me in half. But there was no blood. The me it hit shimmered and vanished. It was an afterimage. I appeared behind the wolf before it could even realize it had missed. I'd only been practicing shifting phantom for a few hours, but my comprehension was so high I had already reached the small success stage. "Did you really think I didn't see you?" I muttered. I lunged with the heavenly light sword play. My blade pierced deep into its flank with a sickening crack of bone. The wolf howled, trying to turn, but I was already moving. I swung again, shouting "Bright Moon." A crescent of black sword chi sliced through the air, cutting the beast clean in two. The fight was over in seconds, but I wasn't satisfied. My angle was off. My spiritual energy flow was sluggish. I spent 2 minutes analyzing every mistake before harvesting the valuable parts of the carcass and vanishing into the trees, leaving a trail of phantoms behind me. By the end of the first day, my movement technique had reached grand success, allowing me to create 3 distinct afterimages at once. My speed had more than doubled. On the second day, I focused on the mountain crushing seal. It was harder to master than the movement skills, but by nightfall, I'd broken through to the first layer. My physical strength and defense doubled, and a thin layer of spiritual armor now coated my skin. I felt solid, like a mountain. I was finally ready to stop being the prey and start being the predator. The mountain-crushing seal had 9 layers in total. Each time I mastered a layer, my physical strength was tempered and my spiritual armor grew tougher. My defense was skyrocketing, but I wasn't happy. "This is way too slow," I muttered to myself. If anyone else practicing the seal heard me, they would have coughed up blood in rage. A normal cultivator would spend a week just trying to understand the basics. Reaching the first layer usually took a full month of grueling work. I had done it in a single day, and I was complaining. For the next several days, I pushed myself to the limit in the outer and middle perimeters of the demon beast forest. During the day, I mastered the mountain-crushing seal and shifting phantom. At night, I found a safe spot to sink into the breath-nourishing technique. My overall strength was surging. By the 10th day, I was forced to retreat from the deeper woods. My clothes were shredded, and I was carrying a broken iron sword. I had several fresh wounds stinging on my skin. This trip hadn't been easy. Damn it, I cursed under my breath. The defense on those Sea Realm beasts is just too high. To sharpen my skills, I had spent the last 2 days hunting in the deep forest. Without using my hidden sword intent, I was basically being chased and beaten by Sea Realm monsters. My movement and sword techniques improved rapidly under the pressure, but my gear couldn't keep up. My common iron sword had snapped after a few clashes, and my robes were little more than rags. I decided it was time to head back to the sect. I needed to sell my harvested materials and buy a sword that wouldn't shatter the moment I hit something hard. Just as I started my trek back, my ears twitched. The sound of fighting echoed nearby, and it was moving fast in my direction. Should I take a look? I thought. Maybe there's a chance to play the fisherman and snatch some loot. Maybe the memories of the sword devil disciples were rubbing off on me. Or maybe this was just who I was now. In this world, robbing others for resources was as common as breathing. 2 figures burst through the trees. One was a young woman in blue robes, her face pale and streaked with blood and fury. Chasing her was a massive, 2-meter-tall brute wielding a heavy saber. I scanned them instantly. The girl was at the peak of the spirit-gathering realm. The man? He was at least in the Sea Realm. Nope. Not my business, I whispered, preparing to slip away. You little brat from the devil's sect, the brute roared with a grin. You think you can make it back? Why don't you come be my concubine instead? I'll treat you real nice. The woman didn't look back. She couldn't afford to slow down. The sword devil sect was close, but she was running out of time. Her eyes were full of a desperate resolve. She would rather die taking him with her than surrender. Suddenly, she spotted me standing in the distance. Fellow disciple, she cried out. I am a student of Elder Qiao from Danqing Peak. Please. She stopped mid-sentence. She had been hoping for a powerful senior brother to help her hold him off until the sect elders noticed the commotion. But when she saw my cultivation level, spirit gathering realm, 3rd stage, her heart sank. What was someone like me even doing this deep in the forest? The beasts around here would tear a 3rd stage cultivator to pieces. She didn't have time to wonder. She veered away from me, not wanting to drag a weakling into her death. She gathered every drop of her remaining spiritual energy. Clear sky slash, she screamed, swinging her blade back in a desperate arc of black light. Still fighting, the brute laughed. Fine, let's end this. He thrust a palm forward. The air groaned as his sea realm energy manifested into a massive black hand, descending like a falling mountain. It was an unstoppable force. The girl's sword light shattered like glass against it. There was no contest. She gripped her sword, her eyes filling with a final, cold despair. She was ready to die. Then, the air blurred. Asterisk swish. 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 Asterisk dozens of sword chi beams whistled past her ears, slamming into the giant black hand. They hit like a silver river of starlight, shredding the brute's attack into nothingness. The brute froze. The woman stared, blinking in shock. Had a grandmaster intervened? I stepped out from behind her, my expression calm. The heavenly bright sword style, I said softly. What is Lu Wenyuan to you? The woman spun around, her jaw dropping. It was me, the weak, 3rd stage cultivator. I was the one who had fired those beams. You know my brother? Lu Minghua stammered. So you're his sister, I replied. I knew him. He gave me some pointers once. That was a lie, of course. The truth was that I had absorbed the sword chi from Lu Wenyuan's grave. He had been a top 10 genius in the inner sect before he died in a hidden realm. Seeing her use that specific move triggered his memories in my mind. Kid, you're just at the 3rd stage and you're trying to play the hero? The brute sneered, recovering his confidence. You must have a hole in your head. He wasn't impressed that I blocked one casual palm. In his eyes, I just had a lucky one-time treasure. He could strike 10 more times. I ignored him and looked at Lu Minghua. Can I borrow your sword? You? But he's in the sea realm, she cried. You can't win. Just run. It's a bit late for that, I said with a small smile. Do you think he's just going to let me walk away? I reached out and took the sword from her hand. The moment my fingers gripped the hilt, a familiar hum vibrated through my soul. A fresh wave of memory fragments from the blade's history flashed through my mind, and I felt the weight of the steel become an extension of my own arm. My understanding of the heavenly bright sword style deepened instantly. I was stunned. I thought my max-level comprehension only worked on the graves of the dead, but it turned out I could learn from the living, too. Seeing her move was like reading a manual in high speed. Kid, don't blame me, the brute growled, his eyes darkening when I didn't respond. Blame your own bad luck. He didn't wait. He thrust his hands forward, sending 2 massive black palms of energy crashing toward me. They were stronger than the last. The air felt heavy, like a mountain was falling. I didn't panic. I raised Lu Minghua's sword and swung. In an instant, nearly 100 streaks of sword chi exploded from the blade. With the sword acting as a natural amplifier, the chi transformed into a literal river of silver light. It swept forward with a roar. The brute's black palms didn't stand a chance. They were shredded by the first few dozen strikes, and the rest of my attack simply swallowed them whole. The giant man froze. His face went pale. How is this possible? He stammered. You're only at the 3rd stage of spirit gathering. How are you blocking me? Behind me, I heard Lu Minghua gasp. She probably thought I had some secret treasure or a one-time trump card. But she was seeing the truth now. I wasn't using a gadget. I was just swinging a sword. She looked bewildered, wondering how a low-level disciple could unleash attacks where every single strand of chi carried the weight of a full-power strike. I tilted my head, genuinely confused. Is this really the strength of a Sea Realm expert? I think I overestimated you. I wasn't trying to be arrogant. I was being honest. The Sea Realm demonic beasts I'd seen earlier today were way more terrifying than this guy. You're looking for death, he roared. He couldn't handle being mocked by an ant like me. A violent surge of spiritual power erupted from his body, swirling into the air. This time, he didn't make a palm. He condensed the energy into a massive, jagged spiritual blade. With a scream of rage, he hacked it down toward my head. The pressure was immense. Fine, I whispered. Let's end this. I slowly raised the sword. A terrifying aura gathered around the steel. Both Lu Mingyue and the brute felt it, a sudden, chilling sensation of a blade pressed against their throats. Slash, I said softly. A beam of white light, brilliant as the Milky Way falling from the heavens, tore through the air. It slammed into his giant spiritual blade. Crack. The brute's attack shattered like cheap glass. My sword light didn't slow down. It tore through his defenses and swept right over him. His eyes widened. That sword. His voice cut off. He didn't even have time to scream before the light split him in two. He was dead before he hit the ground. Silence filled the clearing. Lu Mingyue looked like she'd seen a ghost. A third-stage spirit-gathering cultivator had just one-shot a Sea Realm master. She had to be dreaming. It was impossible. Senior sister, your sword is pretty good, I said, handing it back to her. I walked over to the corpse and started searching. I'd seen plenty of bodies in the sword tombs, so I had zero hesitation. I was acting in self-defense, so I felt no guilt about taking my compensation. After a quick pat-down, I found a small, ornate ring. My heart skipped a beat. A storage ring. These were rare and incredibly valuable. I slipped it into my pocket immediately. Well, if you're okay, I'm heading out. Bye, I said. I didn't wait for her to answer. I moved fast, disappearing into the trees before she could even blink. I only helped because I owed her brother a favor for the sword intent I'd borrowed from his grave. I wasn't looking to make things complicated. Wait, junior brother, what's your name? She shouted after me. Only silence followed. She stood there, stunned by my speed and the sheer power of that final strike. She knew that even if her genius brother were still alive, he wouldn't have been a match for me. She decided to head back to the sect immediately. Someone this talented wouldn't stay hidden for long. I made it back to the Sword Devil sect in less than an hour. Along the way, I figured out how to open the storage ring. It wasn't as grand as I hoped. The space inside was about 10 cubic meters. I found 3,000 low-grade spiritual stones, some random crafting materials, and 2 manuals, Shadow Palm and Shadow Blade. To me, they were useless. Why study mediocre palm techniques when I could focus on the way of the sword? Man, my first time robbing a guy and he turns out to be a pauper, I muttered. Still, the ring itself was a win. A storage ring, even a small one, was worth at least 30,000 spiritual stones. That was a serious fortune. I headed straight to the sex acquisition department to sell the materials I'd gathered from the demonic beasts. The disciples behind the counter stared at me like I had 2 heads. They couldn't wrap their minds around how a third-stage kid was hauling in high-level materials from the deep forest. When they finished weighing everything, they handed me 450 spiritual stones. I took the money, but I couldn't help but pout. 10 days of hard work and life-threatening danger, and I only made 400 stones? This cultivation path was going to be expensive. Killing that Sea Realm guy had been a lucky break. After counting it all up, I walked away with 3,000 spiritual stones, plus his techniques and that storage ring. Robbing the robbers was definitely the fastest way to get rich. Once I finished selling off my beast materials, I headed over to the sect's trading plaza. The Sword Devil sect set this place up specifically for disciples. When people came back from missions with loot they couldn't use, they brought it here to swap or sell. You could find almost anything if you looked hard enough. I didn't have to walk far before I saw stalls covered in manuals. People weren't just selling, though. Plenty of them were looking to buy specific techniques. After comparing prices at a few different spots, I managed to offload the 2 manuals I'd stolen, Shadow Palm and Shadow Blade, for 1,700 low-grade spiritual stones total. Now, I needed a sword. Even though I could manifest sword chi and intent with my bare hands, it wasn't the same. Without a physical blade, my power dropped by at least 30%. In a real fight, a gap like that was the difference between life and death. I spent an hour browsing, but nothing caught my eye. However, some of the help-wanted signs posted by other disciples started to look very interesting. 200 stones for a demonstration of the Liu sword technique at the Great Success stage, one read. 1,200 stones for the secret to the 4th level of the Vajra body, said another. My eyes lit up. This was a gold mine. I might not know much about body tempering, but when it came to swords, I was a walking library. I had absorbed the memories and experiences of over 100 different sword styles from the tombs. With my newly formed sword intent, my understanding of the craft was on a completely different level. I scanned the boards and snatched up a specific request. 500 stones for a detailed demonstration of the Agni sword technique's essence. That was the one. The Agni sword was a common but powerful style. It was easy to learn, but notoriously difficult to master. Among the 2,000 strands of sword chi I'd absorbed back at the graves, at least 50 of them belonged to masters of this specific style. I knew its secrets better than anyone. I'll take this, I said, holding up the wooden sign. I'm looking for a senior brother's guidance, not. The man stopped mid-sentence. He was wearing the blue robes of an inner disciple. His cultivation was at the 9th stage of spirit gathering. He looked at my face, then at my 3rd stage cultivation, and frowned. Junior brother, are you really the one who's going to show me the Agni sword? Does cultivation level dictate how deep someone's understanding of the sword is? I asked calmly. He paused, then nodded apologetically. My mistake. This way, please. He led me to a private training room equipped with defensive arrays to keep our session private. Even so, I could see the doubt lingering in his eyes. He probably thought I was a scammer, but the plaza rules protected him. If he wasn't satisfied with the demo, he didn't have to pay. Give me your sword, I said, reaching out my hand. He hesitated. For a swordsman, giving up your blade is a big deal. I didn't bring one, I added. How am I supposed to show you without a weapon? He sighed and handed it over. The moment my fingers gripped the hilt, a flood of memories rushed through me. My understanding of the Agni sword deepened instantly. I closed my eyes, visualizing this inner disciple practicing in my mind. I saw every flaw, every wasted movement. You're like most people, I said, opening my eyes. You've been training in the wrong direction. His face darkened. The wrong direction? My master is an inner sect elder at the late Will See realm. He taught me this himself. Are you saying he's wrong? He reached for his sword. Forget it. I'm wasting my time. I didn't argue. I just moved. The blade in my hand suddenly glowed with a fierce red light. The temperature in the room skyrocketed. I began to move through the forms of the Agni sword, but it didn't look like the stiff, robotic movements he was used to. The sword felt alive. It felt like fire itself. By the 4th move, the inner disciple was frozen. His jaw dropped. This wasn't just Great Success stage. This was approaching perfection. My understanding of the sword was easily on par with his master's. Most people think fire is just about being aggressive and fierce, I said, finishing a strike. He nodded instinctively, hanging on my every word. Isn't it? Watch closely, I replied. I swung the sword again, but this time, the lights in the room seemed to die out. The only thing visible was a tiny, flickering red spark at the tip of my blade. Then, the air itself began to warp. A ripple of heat distorted the space, rushing outward like a wave. The disciple felt a sudden, crushing sense of danger. He scrambled backward, hitting the wall of the training room in a panic. When the lights flickered back on, I was standing right in front of him, calmly holding the sword out for him to take. A single spark can start a prairie fire, I said. He swallowed hard, his face pale with shock. He took the sword with trembling hands and bowed deeply to me. I apologize for my arrogance, he said breathlessly. Your understanding of the Agni sword is the most profound I have ever seen. Even my master hasn't reached this level. I am Wu Zongqing of the Red Flame Peak. Thank you for your guidance. It's just a business transaction, I said, waving my hand dismissively. I gestured toward his pockets. I showed you the sword. You liked it. Now, about the payment. Oh, right. Here. He reached into his robe and pulled out 10 mid-grade spiritual stones. I frowned. One mid-grade stone was worth 100 low-grade ones. He was handing me 1,000 stones. The price was 500. Why the extra? You showed me a depth I didn't think was possible, Wu Zongqing said, his voice full of respect. This extra is because you earned it. Wu Zongqing was surprisingly polite. I didn't refuse his extra stones. I needed the snacks. In this world, cultivators can absorb spiritual energy directly from spirit stones. The higher the quality, the faster the progress. Usually, basic cultivation methods only convert about 50% of the energy from a low-grade stone. But I had discovered something interesting. My modified version of the chi gathering art was far more efficient. It hit a conversion rate of over 70%. That meant every single stone I used gave me 30% more power than anyone else. Scale that up to 1,000 or 10,000 stones, and the gap between me and my peers would become an ocean. One more thing, I said as I turned to leave. If you feel your sword path has hit a wall, try looking for a water-based technique. It might help you break through. I walked away without looking back. That last tip was a bonus for the extra 5 mid-grade stones. Whether he listened or not wasn't my problem. Behind me, Wu Zongqing stood frozen in thought. He practiced fire techniques. To him, water and fire were enemies. It seemed counterintuitive, but he didn't understand the balance I had seen in the blade. Suddenly, he slapped his forehead. He'd forgotten to ask for my name. He didn't recognize me from the inner sect. Was I an outer disciple? A level 3 spirit gathering realm cultivator would be a top contender in the outer sect. With the trials coming up, he realized the rankings were about to be turned upside down. I didn't pick up any more missions. I wandered the trading plaza instead and dropped 4,000 low-grade stones on a mid-grade spirit tool, a real sword. Unlike common blades, a spirit tool can be nourished by your own energy, boosting the power of your techniques. I'd heard the best ones could even grow their own souls. It cost a fortune, and I had to haggle for half the day to get it. The moment my fingers gripped the hilt, memory fragments flooded my mind. This sword had 2 previous masters. One died in battle, the other grew poor and sold it. From the one who died, I gained the memories of 2 earth-grade sword techniques. It was a steal. The following weeks fell into a strict routine. Inside the Brahma Heaven tombs, I touched swords, practiced forms, and deepened my sword intent. When I could get permission to leave, I ventured deep into the monster forest to hunt Wheel-Sea realm beasts. During this time, I noticed a strange quirk with my modified chi gathering art. Once I hit the 4th level of the spirit gathering realm, my progress started moving horizontally. Instead of breaking into the next level, my energy just became denser and more massive. It was good for the long run, but I didn't know why it was happening. Most people discard the chi gathering art the moment they reach the spirit realm because it's too basic. I tried switching to higher level manuals I bought, but they were garbage compared to my modified version. So I stuck with it. Today, the sun was bright, and the Sword Devil sect was buzzing. Even the servant disciples were given a rare day off. I'm finally out of that place, one of the other gravekeepers shouted, breathing in the fresh air. Me too. I've been stuck in the tombs for months. A group of about 100 new gravekeepers headed, for most of them. This was their first time leaving the Brahma Heaven area. The monthly quota of cleaning 10 tombs was a nightmare. Out of the 100 who started, only a handful of us had managed to finish the tasks every single month. I didn't care much about the test itself. I was more interested in what Elder Gung would say to me once the dust settled. Wow, look, that's Shin Gao, the number 1 outer disciple, a girl whispered nearby. I looked over. People were crowding around a handsome guy. Word was he'd reached the 6th level of the spirit gathering realm. He'd missed the last promotion, so everyone expected him to dominate this year. The square was packed, the air thick with gossip and nerves. Silence. A calm voice cut through the noise, instantly chilling the air. Every mouth shut. We all looked up at the high platform. The other gravekeepers turned pale. It was Elder Chun, the man who had kidnapped us and thrown us into the tombs months ago. Seeing him again brought back a lot of memories for the others, mostly bad ones. For me, it was different. In a strange way, I had him to thank for putting me in a place where I could grow this fast. The rules are the same as every year, Elder Chun announced. Only those at the 5th level of chi refinement or higher may participate. The top 10 will receive 5 mid-grade spirit stones and a token for the hidden pavilion. The top 3 will also receive a high-grade spirit returning pill. The crowd erupted in murmurs. Level 5? I'm only at level 4. One of the gravekeepers sighed. I guess I have to wait until next year. I'm level 5, but I'm not going up there just to get embarrassed, another added. The gravekeepers around me shook their heads. Most of them had only reached the 3rd level of chi refinement. They were nowhere near the requirement. But then, they all stopped and turned their eyes toward me. I was the loner. I never talked to them. I just did my work, finished first, and disappeared into the forest. They couldn't read my cultivation level at all. One of them finally gathered the courage to speak. Brother Lin Xiao, are you going to join the test? One of the more talkative gravekeepers walked up to me. We had spent months in the same pits, so they at least knew my name. The others pricked up their ears, waiting for my answer. I'm joining, I said simply. The group nodded, their eyes widening with a mix of awe and confusion. They realized my cultivation had actually reached the 5th level of the chi refinement realm. To them, my talent was terrifying. They couldn't understand why someone this gifted had been dumped in the Pantheon graveyard to rot. I saw the questions in their eyes, but I didn't offer an explanation. After months of sensing and refining my sword intent, I had learned to mask my presence. If I didn't want someone to see my true strength, even a powerhouse from the Sea of Clouds realm wouldn't be able to peer through my disguise. Registration began shortly after. I stepped into the line, feeling like a sore thumb. Everyone else wore the robes of outer disciples, while I was still dressed in my tattered servant's uniform. The disciples around me sneered, their expressions full of disdain. A servant actually showed up for the trials? How thick-skinned can you get? One whispered. Does he really think reaching level 5 is enough to take a prize? Another mocked. The registration disciple sat at a small desk, asking the same questions over and over. Name, age, cultivation level. Chen Quan, 26, 7th level of Qi refinement. Wang Pinda, 32, 7th level of Qi refinement. The higher the level, the harder it was to progress. The gap between each stage grew wider with every step. Finally, it was my turn. The registrar looked up and froze. A servant? Which peak are you from? He had registered 2 other servants earlier that day, but they were both old men who had spent nearly a decade scraping by just to hit the minimum requirement. I looked young, too young. If I had actually hit the requirement, it meant my talent was high. And if my talent was high, why was I a gravekeeper? It didn't add up. I'm a gravekeeper from the Pantheon graveyard. My name is Lin Xiao, I replied. A gravekeeper? The man gasped. Most gravekeepers were walking corpses, pale, sickly, and weak. He couldn't see my exact level, but he could feel the vibrant, powerful blood energy radiating from me. I looked nothing like the others. Fine. Name, age, cultivation. Don't lie. Faking your stats is a heavy offense. I hesitated for a second. Lin Xiao, 20 years old. 1st level of the Spirit Gathering Realm. Old Gung had told me that in the Sword Devil sect, true talent didn't need to be hidden. However, I knew my situation was special. I decided to hold back my actual strength, the 4th level, and only claim the 1st. Even so, the registrar's eyes nearly popped out of his head. What did you say? You've broken through to the Spirit Gathering Realm. He didn't believe a word of it. A 20-year-old servant reaching that level was pure nonsense. The disciples nearby started to jeer, but I didn't give them the chance. I released a tiny sliver of my aura, controlling it perfectly to mimic the 1st level of Spirit Gathering. The air around me grew heavy. The crowd went silent. In the outer sect, reaching the Spirit Gathering Realm meant you were a top-tier talent. Seeing a servant achieve it was a shock to the system. Suddenly, the mockery turned into burning envy. They all came to the same conclusion. I must have found a lucky chance, or a hidden treasure. A lucky break. Why did it have to be a servant? They grumbled. If I had that kind of luck, I'd be even further ahead than him. The registrar cleared his throat, shaken, and finished my paperwork. All right, the outer sect test begins now. The first stage was simple. We were led to a massive, 2-meter-tall black stone monument, the sword testing stone. Each disciple had to strike it with their weapon or a palm print. The stone would measure the strength of the attack and display a numerical value. Only the top 100 would move on to the second round. As the stone was hauled out, I felt a strange chill. It radiated an ancient, desolate energy. There was a deep, jagged sword mark carved right into the center of it. The moment I saw that mark, the sword intent inside my body went wild. It wasn't just reacting, it was hungry. It felt like a cat spotting a mouse. I turned to a nearby outer disciple. "Excuse me, brother. Do you know the history of that stone?" The disciple jumped, startled that a spirit-gathering expert was being so polite to him. "Oh, don't call me brother. After today, you'll be way ahead of me. I should be calling you senior." He leaned in, eager to help. "That stone is legendary. Our sect leader found it in an ancient ruin 100 years ago. See that sword mark? They say an ancient sword cultivator left it there during a moment of sudden enlightenment. People say if you can understand the mark, you'll gain incredible power. But honestly, it's been here a century, and even masters from other sects haven't figured it out. Now it's just a tool for us." I nodded, my eyes locked on the mark. An ancient sword cultivator? I believed it. The testing began. The first disciple stepped up, drew his sword, and gathered his energy for 3 full breaths before striking. Disciple number 1. Score, 410. Next, the second disciple stepped up. Score, 546. Next, I watched closely as the line moved. I was number 410, so I had time to observe. I quickly figured out the scale. A level 9 Chi refinement strike usually scored between 600 and 800. A peak level strike hit around 1,000. Anything over 1,000 meant you were in the spirit-gathering realm. Suddenly, the crowd erupted in cheers. "Look, senior brother Gushur is up." He was the man everyone considered the second strongest in the outer sect. All eyes were on him, but my eyes stayed on that ancient crack in the stone. My sword intent was screaming, and I realized I wasn't just here to pass a test. I was here to eat. I heard the whispers ripple through the crowd like a wave. Everyone was talking about senior brother Gushur. They said his goal today was to dethrone the top dog of the outer sect, Shingao. Gushur had already reached the 6th level of the spirit-gathering realm. People were debating who was stronger, but I didn't care about their rankings. I glanced at Gushur as he stepped up to the stone. To me, his aura felt average at best. With a sudden flash of cold light, Gushur drew his sword. He swung in a blur, sending a gale of green sword chi crashing into the stone. A dull thud echoed across the square, and the numbers flickered into existence. Disciple number 242. Score, 3,489. A collective gasp went up. It was the highest score yet, nearly triple the previous record. He hadn't even looked like he was trying. If that was just a casual strike, what would his full power look like? But the excitement didn't last long. The crowd erupted again as his rival, Shingao, stepped onto the stage. Unlike the brooding Gushur, Shingao was smiling and waving to the crowd with effortless confidence. Gushur's brow furrowed in annoyance. Shingao didn't even draw his sword. He just flicked his wrist, sending a bolt of pure sword chi flying from his fingers. The recording disciple stared at the stone, his expression turning strange. Disciple number 243. Score, 3,490. Exactly 1 point higher. The crowd went wild. That kind of precision and control was terrifying, especially since he hadn't used a weapon. Gushur let out a cold snort, turned on his heel, and walked away. Shingao just shrugged and followed. After those two finished, the energy died down. The next 100 testers were mediocre. One person hit 1,750, but the rest were forgettable. Number 409. Score, 810. Next, I stretched my arms and legs. Finally, it was my turn. I'd been waiting in line for over 2 hours. As I walked toward the stone, I felt hundreds of eyes on me. A lowly gravekeeper with spirit-gathering cultivation was a rare sight in the Sword Devil sect. My fellow gravekeepers cheered for me, but high up on the platform, Elder Chun was staring at me with pure confusion. He whispered to himself, wondering what kind of secret luck I'd stumbled upon to break through so quickly in just 6 months. I reached the stone. I didn't draw my sword. The crowd started muttering, thinking I was trying to copy Shun Gao's flashy finger strike. They thought I was being suicidal. If I failed to hit the top 100 because I was showing off, I'd be kicked out of the trials. But I didn't strike the stone at all. I reached out and gently placed my palm against the ancient crack. "What is he doing?" someone shouted. "Test or get out." People are waiting. Then it happened. A sharp, piercing aura exploded from my body. It felt like it was tearing the very air apart. I closed my eyes and let myself sink into that overwhelming power. On the high platform, Elder Chen bolted upright, his chair clattering back. His eyes were wide with shock. Epiphany, he stammered. An epiphany was the ultimate dream for any cultivator. It was a moment where the world clicked into place, breaking through bottlenecks and revealing the hidden laws of the universe. Some geniuses got a few in a lifetime. Most people never saw one. Elder Chen had practiced for decades and never experienced it. I'd been here 6 months, and I was falling into one right in front of him. Gushi and Shun Gao watched me, their fists clenched. They had touched this stone 100 times and never felt a thing. They saw me as a threat now, but they tried to comfort themselves. I was only at the first level of spirit gathering. How much could I really learn? Then the world started to shake. Every sword in the square began to vibrate in its scabbard. Thousands of strands of sword chi manifested out of thin air, swirling around me like a hurricane. A terrifying pressure surged toward the sky, so sharp it felt like it was slicing the clouds in half. The sea of clouds above us parted, revealing a faint, shimmering white light. The disciples stood frozen, terrified by the phenomenon. Elder Chen looked like his eyes were going to fall out of his head. A sword intent seed, he gasped. He's forming a sword intent seed at the first level? It was impossible. It was insane. Some disciples tried to move closer, drawn in by the strange energy, but Elder Chen almost screamed for them to stop. Interrupting an epiphany was a crime that could get him executed if the sect leaders found out. Before he could act, an old man appeared in front of me as if he'd teleported. It was the white-haired gatekeeper from the hidden pavilion. Elder Chen immediately straightened his back, his face full of deep respect. "Greetings, Elder Mu," he said, his voice trembling. The disciples were stunned. Why was the chief elder of the outer sect bowing to a library guard? Elder Mu didn't even look at him. His eyes were locked on me, filled with the same shock and disbelief. He raised his hand and formed a complex seal toward the sky. The heavenly vision vanished instantly, hidden from the outside world. But inside that silence, I remained submerged in the deep, cold ocean of the sword. I wasn't done yet. A seed of sword intent from a kid at the first level of spirit gathering? Elder Chen muttered, leaning toward Elder Mu. Our sect is about to birth a true monster. Elder Chen was full of respect, but Elder Mu just gave a faint, mysterious smile. You're still looking down on this little fellow, Elder Mu said softly. Elder Chen froze. He looked at me again, scanning every inch of my body, but he couldn't see what the old guard was seeing. Elder Mu didn't explain. He just watched me with eyes that grew brighter by the second. He knew Old Gung had a sharp eye for talent, but even Old Gung had been played. Everyone thought I was just a genius with a nameless sword body. They thought I was only at the first level of spirit gathering. They were wrong. In just a few months, I had reached the 4th level. And what I was condensing right now wasn't just a seed or a prototype. It was real, genuine sword intent. I had reached 20% mastery. To put that in perspective, that's a level of comprehension usually reserved for experts in the profound Dan realm. It was a level of talent people told stories about, but never actually saw. Elder Chun and Elder Mu stood guard, their presence keeping the curious crowd at a distance. I stayed submerged in that cold, sharp ocean for what felt like hours. When I finally opened my eyes, 2 sticks of incense had burned down. I felt incredible. Even though my cultivation level hadn't jumped, the harvest was better than I imagined. I had drained a massive amount of ownerless sword intent from the trial stone. I had refined it, making my own intent deeper and sharper. My combat power had effectively doubled. I looked at the trial stone. If one stone could give me this much, what if I found more? Could I eventually master an entire great Tao of the sword? The thought made my heart race. I looked at the deep gash on the stone with newfound reverence. Who was the person who left this mark? Did such a godlike figure still walk the earth? Thank you, Elder Chun. And thank you, Senior, I said, bowing to the 2 men. They had protected my meditation, and I wasn't ungrateful. You hide yourself quite well, little guy, Elder Moose said, his gaze piercing. I smiled back, trying to look innocent. Senior must be joking. I doubt I can hide anything from your eyes. Now that my sword intent had improved, I could sense his power. This library guard was definitely above the profound Dan realm. In a place like the Sword Devil sect, a man like that was a living legend. How about this? Elder Mu said, his eyes twinkling. Become my disciple. I'll handle the explanation with Old Gong. I blinked, stunned. He was asking to apprentice me on the spot? Elder Chen looked like he'd been struck by lightning. But then his face went pale when he heard the name Old Gong. To most, Old Gong was just a grumpy old man. To the high-level members of the sect, he was a taboo, a monster. The fact that I was already his made Elder Chen shudder. Don't overthink it, Elder Mu said, seeing my hesitation. He realized he might have been too impulsive. If he actually stole me away before the trials, Old Gong might actually try to kill him. We'll talk after your outer sect test. I'll go see that old fossil with you then. Understood, I said, feeling a wave of relief. Taking a master in this world was a massive commitment, and I barely knew this man. Elder Moon nodded and vanished, reappearing instantly on the high platform. Elder Chin turned to me, his tone now incredibly polite. Lin Xiao, you may continue your test. I walked up to the trial stone. I didn't use a sword this time. I just threw a casual punch. The stone vibrated, and a number flickered into existence. 2,100. The stone still worked, but it felt empty now. I had sucked the soul out of it. Lin Xiao, score, 2,100. Next, the recorder shouted. The crowd erupted in whispers. It was a good score, third place overall, right behind the top geniuses Shun Gao and Gu Shi. But after the massive spectacle I'd just caused, people were disappointed. Only 2,100? I thought he'd smash the record. He only used a punch. If he used a sword, he'd probably match the senior brothers. No way. He's only at the first level. The seniors are at the sixth. There's a huge gap. Up on the platform, Shen Gao looked at Gu Shi. What do you think of him? Gu Shi's face was like ice. He's strong. He's hiding his true cultivation. You noticed too? Shen Gao sighed. I heard he was a gravekeeper just 6 months ago. If he's grown this much in half a year, he'll leave us in the dust by next season. A gravekeeper? Gu Shi's eyes widened. He must have a rare constitution. He couldn't hide the flicker of envy in his eyes. An hour later, the first round ended. Shen Gao was first, Gu Shi second, and I was third. The top 100 disciples moved on to the second stage, the combat trials. This was a bracket-style tournament to decide the final top 10. The atmosphere in the arena reached a fever pitch as disciples fought for glory. I was the first of the top seeds to be called up. My opponent was a disciple at the peak of the Qi refinement realm. He was ranked 100th, the very bottom of the bracket. As he stepped onto the stage and looked at me, his face crumpled. He looked like he wanted to cry. Of all the people to draw in the first round, he had to get the guy who almost broke the sky earlier. My opponent looked like he wanted to crawl into a hole and die. To him, I was one of the 3 people he dreaded facing most. He would have preferred fighting senior brother Gu Shi over me, the mysterious newcomer who had just punched a hole in the air. Please, senior brother, guide me, he said, sounding way too polite. In this sect, strength dictated everything. If you were stronger, you were the senior. I just nodded calmly. Begin. The moment the word left my mouth, he lunged. He didn't hesitate. He knew his cultivation was lower than mine, and he figured his only chance was to end it quickly before I could react. He swung his blade, unleashing 3 arcs of yellow sword chi that whistled through the air from different angles. It was his ultimate move. He stared at me, eyes wide, waiting to see how I'd defend so he could plan his next strike. But I didn't move. I didn't even raise a hand. The sword chi slammed directly into my body. The crowd gasped, and the disciple froze, thinking he'd actually killed me. But as the me on stage began to flicker and fade, a voice drifted from right behind his ear. Distracted in a fight? You lose. He spun around in a panic, but he was too slow. I slammed a palm into his back. The force was massive. He went flying off the platform, tumbling into the dirt below. I stood there, calmly retracting my energy, and walked down the steps. The crowd went wild with confusion. What happened? I didn't even see him move, one guy shouted. Others were whispering about the shifting phantom technique. They couldn't believe an afterimage could look that real. They looked at me like I was a monster. How could a lowly gravekeeper be this fast? The tournament continued. Gusher stepped up next. His opponent lasted 3 rounds before surrendering, honored just to have survived that long. Then came Shin Gao. He was the gentleman of the sect, trading blows for a dozen rounds before politely knocking his opponent out. The crowd loved him. By the end of the first round, everyone knew there were only 3 real contenders: Shin Gao, Gusher, and me. But I was the biggest mystery. I hadn't even drawn my sword yet. I was winning everything with just my fists and my speed. Finally, the bracket shifted. The air grew tense. My name was called, and so was his. I was up against Gusher. "Junior brother Lin, please guide me," Gusher said, his voice like ice. "You too, senior brother," I replied. Up in the VIP stands, Elder Chen looked at Old Mu. "Who do you think wins this?" Old Mu chuckled. "Gusher is talented, but Lin Xiao has already touched the essence of sword intent. It's not even a contest. And if he doesn't use his sword intent?" Elder Chen countered. "Gusher practices the blazing fire sword style. It's designed to counter high-speed opponents. Without his trump card, Lin Xiao's lower cultivation will catch up to him." Old Mu just smiled. "I bet Gusher won't last 3 rounds." On the stage, we stood perfectly still. Gusher's eyes dropped to my waist, then back to my face. His brow furrowed. "Junior brother, are you still not going to draw your sword?" I stood there, hands empty, even though the heavy weight of my blade was right there on my back. If I can win without it, why bother? Gusher's face turned red with rage. "You're even more arrogant than Shin Gao." He unsheathed his blade, and the temperature on the stage skyrocketed. A literal wave of fire erupted from his body, swirling around him like a crimson tide. "Hunting strike," he roared. He swung, and a snake of pure fire shot out from the wave. It moved with terrifying speed, twisting the very air with its heat. I activated the shifting phantom technique immediately, leaving a blurred image behind. Usually, that was enough. Not this time. The fire snake had eyes. It ignored the phantom and curved midair, snapping at my heels. I moved again, then again. 1, 2, 3 afterimages appeared on the stage, flickering like ghosts. The snake hissed, confused by the multiple targets. "Find him," Gusher growled, swinging his sword repeatedly. More fire snakes burst forth, flooding the stage. I didn't panic. I pushed the technique harder. 4 images. 6. 9. Suddenly, there were 9 versions of me circling Gusher. The disciples in the crowd were losing their minds. None of them had ever seen the shifting phantom technique used like this. Most people ignored movement techniques to focus on flashy sword styles, but seeing me now, they were all regretting their life choices. Elder Chun, who had been watching from the stands, actually stood up. His jaw dropped. 9 phantoms? That's near-perfect mastery. He had practiced this exact technique for over 10 years and could only manage 8 phantoms, and mine were twice as solid as his. He looked like he wanted to cry. He'd spent a decade on this, and a trash-tier gravekeeper had surpassed him in 6 months. On the stage, Gusher was sweating. His fire snakes were useless against 9 identical targets. He realized he couldn't catch me with precision, so he changed tactics. "Since you like to run, I'll give you nowhere to go. Great prairie fire." He swung his sword in a massive arc. Instead of snakes, a wall of flame erupted, covering every square inch of the platform. It was a cage of fire. If I stayed on the stage, I'd be cooked. The flames roared, swallowing my phantoms one by one until they reached the real me. I stopped moving. The fire surged forward, a wall of heat intended to force me out of bounds. Gusher wasn't trying to kill me, just win the match. But he had no idea what he was actually dealing with. But a split second later, Gusher's face froze. He realized something was wrong. With a dull thud, the wall of flame that was supposed to swallow me was suddenly snuffed out. I stood in the center of the stage, untouched. A faint, glowing green mountain seal shimmered around my body, suppressing the heat and crushing the flames into nothing. The explosive mountain seal. Gusher gasped. He finally understood why my physical strength was so terrifying. He'd seen my test results on the sword testing stone. Over 2,000 pounds of force in a single punch. It was because of this body tempering technique. It clearly wasn't low level, either. But he looked confused. I was a sword cultivator. Why was I wasting time on body tempering? Haha, this kid is interesting. Very interesting. Old Gung laughed from the sidelines. He knew I'd picked that technique from the hidden pavilion, but he hadn't thought much of it then. Body tempering techniques are notoriously harder to master than movement or sword styles. But seeing me now, he was genuinely shocked. I hadn't just learned it. I had reached the 4th level. Each level of the explosive mountain seal could block an attack from someone one small realm higher than the user. My actual cultivation was at the 4th level of the spirit gathering realm. With this seal active, no one below the great perfection stage could even scratch me. Old Gung's jaw wouldn't close. In just 6 months, I had reached the 4th level of cultivation, mastered my movement technique, reached a minor success in body tempering, and condensed 2% sword intent. Any one of those would make me a genius. All 4 combined. I was a monster. If I lived long enough, I wasn't just a disciple. I was the future of the Sword Devil sect. Back on stage, Gusher refused to give up. He sent a dozen fire snakes screaming toward me. I didn't even bother dodging this time. I let them hit me. Bang, bang, bang. The moment the snakes touched the mountain seal, they were crushed and extinguished. Not a single spark got through. I lose, Gusher said, his voice thick with frustration. It wasn't just that he couldn't break my defense. It was the fact that I hadn't even drawn my sword yet. I deactivated the seal and nodded to him. The crowd was dead silent. This black horse of the outer sect was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The trials continued. A few matches later, Gusher faced Shin Gao. Gusher's mental state was a mess after losing to me, and he fell within 15 rounds. Finally, it was time for the main event, the final match of the outer sect trials. The undisputed number 1, Shin Gao, against the biggest dark horse in sect history, me. The atmosphere was electric. Shin Gao stepped onto the stage looking as poised and confident as ever. The disciples were screaming his name, hoping their senior brother could finally put me in my place. I looked at him, feeling a bit of anticipation myself. After my sword intent had evolved, I wanted to test its true power. Junior brother Lin, can we discuss something? Shin Gao asked with a smile. Go ahead, senior brother, I replied, curious. I know I'm no match for you, Shin Gao said loudly, his voice carrying across the plaza. So for this match, I concede. I blinked. The crowd went into a total meltdown. The top disciple was quitting before a single blow was struck. Even Gu Shi, watching from the side, looked annoyed. He knew Shin Gao just liked to make an entrance, but this was extreme. Shin Gao didn't care about their reactions. He had watched my fight with Gu Shi and knew the truth. More importantly, he knew I had sword intent, the hallmark of a core disciple or a powerful elder. He was miles away from that level. But before I officially stepped down, Shin Gao continued. Could you let me experience the level of your swordplay? I understood. He was a smart man. He didn't want to get hurt, but he wanted to learn. Fair enough. What style do you practice? The red light sword style, he answered. The moment the words left his mouth, my sword leaped from its scabbard. I didn't even touch the hilt. A massive wave of sword chi erupted from me, hanging in the air like a river of stars. It felt like the sun itself was being eclipsed by the glow of my blade. The light was so piercing that everyone in the crowd had to shield their eyes. By the time they could see again, Shin Gao had been sent flying 50 feet off the platform. He landed hard, coughing, clearly injured but not broken. I had already sheathed my sword and was walking down the steps. That's impossible, someone whispered. Shin Gao hadn't even had a chance to react. If I had wanted him dead, he wouldn't have a head right now. Shin Gao stood up, his eyes full of awe. He bowed deeply toward my back. Thank you, junior brother, for your guidance. He wasn't being sarcastic, he meant it. The disciples were baffled. Their hero had just been blasted off the stage, and he was saying thank you? Why is he thanking him? One disciple asked Gu Shi. Ask him yourself. Gu Shi snapped, turning to leave. He was terrified. I had just used the ultimate move of the red light sword style, a move even Shin Gao hadn't mastered yet. Gu Shi realized he needed to go into seclusion immediately. He used to think he was a genius, but next to me, he felt like a peasant. The trials ended. I took first place, Shin Gao second, and Gu Shi third. Elder Chen handed me my prize. a bottle of top-grade spirit-returning pills. There were 10 pills inside, worth about 2,000 low-grade spirit stones. After buying my new sword, I was nearly broke, so this was a godsend. 2 pills a day would keep my cultivation surging for nearly a week. Come on, kid. Hurry up. Old Gung didn't even give me time to celebrate. He grabbed my shoulder, and before I could say a word, the world blurred. We vanished from the plaza, leaving the gossiping disciples behind. While the outer sect was buzzing about my victory, things were much darker at the inner sect's crimson flame peak. A tired-looking disciple stood before a grand pavilion, sighing. That was Senior Brother Wu's last chance, wasn't it? Someone whispered in the shadows. It's too hard to become the master's true disciple. If he fails again, he loses his status as a core candidate. He was too impatient. If he'd waited another year, he might have passed. Now, there's no hope for him. It was a pity. Even the top-ranked disciples couldn't pass the master's trial. So how could anyone else? I listened to the whispers of the crowd as Wu Zongqing stood there, his expression unreadable. He walked toward the main pavilion and dropped to his knees. Master, your disciple is here for the trial, he shouted. The nearby disciples of Crimson Flame Peak shook their heads. It was official. Wu Zongqing was using his final chance. Zongqing, are you sure? A majestic voice boomed from inside the pavilion. This trial tests your comprehension, but more importantly, it tests your state of mind. I am sure, Wu Zongqing replied firmly. Then begin in the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn, the voice said, sounding slightly helpless. The other disciples were confused. Just last month, Wu Zongqing had no clue how to progress with the blazing fire sword style. How could he have a breakthrough in just a few days? It was impossible. That style was easy to learn, but notoriously hard to master. Only a handful of people in the entire Sword Devil sect had ever reached perfection in it. They whispered that he was being impatient again. Wu Zongqing ignored them. He closed his eyes and stabilized his breathing. In his mind, he replayed every single move the mysterious junior brother had shown him back at the trading market. In the Sword Devil sect, there were 9 main peaks, each housing 3,000 inner disciples. Only by passing a master's trial could one become a true legacy disciple. That was the only way to get the resources needed to climb the inner sect elite rankings. In this sect, resources were limited. The best pills and opportunities went to the top 100 elites. It wasn't cruelty, it was reality. Wu Zongqing gripped his sword hilt. He had to pass. He had to fight for his future. Master, I am ready, he said, his voice deep and focused. Begin, the voice commanded. With a sharp hum, Wu Zongqing's sword cleared its scabbard. Sword light wrapped around him like living flames. He began the blazing fire sword style, every move seasoned and familiar. The sword chi transformed into fire, darting like spirit snakes. Not bad, one disciple remarked. His form is better than it was a few days ago, but it's not enough. To pass, he needs to be near the state of perfection. Suddenly, a young man stepped out from the pavilion and glared at the crowd. Silence. Do not whisper while someone is under review. The crowd went quiet. It was Senior Brother Yuan. He watched Wu Zongqing closely. He knew Wu Zongqing's talent well. Normally, it would take at least another year to reach this level. But as he watched, his brow furrowed. Something was different. Inside Wu Zongqing's mind, he wasn't just thinking about forms. He was thinking about that one devastating strike I had shown him. Fire was fierce and aggressive, yes, but it could also be a tiny spark that set 10,000 miles ablaze. Prairie fire, Wu Zongqing roared. All his sword chi condensed onto the tip of his blade in an instant. His spiritual energy surged violently, and a massive, solid wave of heat erupted. It's too hot, the disciple screamed, scrambling back. I can't block this. I'm finished. Senior Brother Yuan's face changed. He moved to protect the others, but the heat was so intense he realized he could only protect himself. He wouldn't be fast enough to save the rest. Just then, a massive hand made of red spiritual energy blasted out from the pavilion. It slammed down, instantly snuffing out the flames. The disciples stood there, shaking and gasping for air. They never expected Wu Zongqing to possess such terrifying power. Haha, good. The voice from the pavilion laughed, filled with pride. I hereby announce that from this day forward, Wu Zongqing is my legacy disciple. Wu Zongqing collapsed, completely drained of strength. He forced himself to stand and bowed deeply. Thank you, Master, for your recognition. I will continue to work hard. As he breathed, he made a silent vow. As soon as he recovered, he would find that mysterious junior brother. He had to thank me in person. Without my guidance, he never would have made it. Meanwhile, I was experiencing something entirely different. Old Gung had me by the shoulder, and we were soaring through the sky. The scenery blurred into streaks of color. I realized then that experts in the profound pill realm didn't just fly. They moved at speeds I couldn't even imagine. Even if I mastered my movement techniques to perfection, I wouldn't be a fraction as fast. And I knew Old Gung wasn't even trying. In seconds, we reached the forbidden sword grave. Old Gung didn't stop. He traced a seal in the air, and the hidden barrier opened a gap for us. We whistled through. This was a restricted area, yet Old Gung entered like he owned the place. You old fossil, stop hiding in the pavilion and come out to chat. Old Gung shouted as we hovered in the air. A figure appeared below us. It was Old Kai. He looked up at Old Gung with annoyance, but his eyes widened when he saw me. You old bastard, Old Kai grumbled. What kind of trouble are you stirring up now? Watch your mouth, Old Gung laughed. I'm here on official business. Official business? Let's hear it then, Old Kai said, rolling his eyes. I want to take this kid as my disciple, Old Gung said seriously. Old Kai gasped. He hadn't expected that. In a flash, he was beside me, grabbing my other shoulder. His eyes nearly popped out of his head. Sword intent at 20%. Old Kai stammered. How? It was just a tiny spark when I saw you last. Kid, how did you do it? He was genuinely shocked. Reaching the first level of sword intent was hard enough, but progressing to the second level usually took geniuses years of meditation. I had done it in months. To be honest, Elder, I said, keeping it simple. I touched the sword testing stone during the outer sect trials and felt a sudden flash of insight. When I came to, my sword intent had grown. It was the truth, and people would be talking about it soon anyway. Old Kai went silent. He had studied that stone for years and never gotten anything out of it. He looked at me, his eyes growing brighter and more intense by the second. He realized my comprehension was off the charts. I was the perfect seed for a sword cultivator. Old Gung saw that look and got defensive. Hey, what are you thinking, you old fossil? I saw him first. Don't you dare try to steal him. Old Mu looked at Old Gung with a face full of suspicion. He had already said his greetings and was ready to take me away to start my training. Old Gung finally let go of my shoulder, acting like nothing was wrong. He gave a soft, knowing laugh. I've had my eye on this kid for a long time, Old Gung said. Do you really think you can just walk away with him? Old Mu's expression shifted instantly. Bullshit. If you'd liked him that much, you would have invited him into the sword pavilion ages ago. Old Gung just huffed. He turned his gaze back to me. Little guy, didn't I tell you to come find me at the sword pavilion after the outer sect trials? I could feel the tension in the air thickening. It was like standing between two volcanoes ready to blow. I didn't want to offend either of them, so I answered quickly. Yes, Elder Gung said that. I was actually planning to head to the sword pavilion right after I finished up here. Old Gung laughed loudly, throwing a mocking look at Old Mu. Huh. Thanks for delivering him to me, old friend. You've worked hard. Old Mu looked like he'd swallowed a fly. His face was pale. He realized he'd played himself. If he had known, he would have forced me to become his disciple back at the outer sect square. He shouldn't have cared about protocol with this old fossil around. He took a deep breath, then let out a long, heavy sigh. You old bastard, Old Mu said, his voice serious and heavy. Name your price. What will it take for you to let me have this kid? I'll give you anything. He wasn't joking. I could hear the determination in his voice. Old Gung was about to kick him out, but he stopped when he saw Old Mu's face. These two usually fought like cats and dogs, but they were actually close friends. Old Mu was acting completely out of character. Sure, I was talented, but Old Gung knew I wasn't at the level where people should be begging to teach me yet. The sword pavilion was a strange, specific place. He had only planned to give me some pointers, not a full apprenticeship. But then I showed up today and gave him the shock of a lifetime. What exactly are you planning? Old Gung asked, his voice low. Why are you so desperate to take Lin Xiao as your disciple? He has incredible comprehension and 20% sword intent. He belongs in the sword pavilion. Old Mu didn't back down. And if he inherits the sword pavilion, how long do you think he'll live? Old Gung went silent. He looked down and sighed. That kind of fate, it isn't for us to decide. Old Mu ignored him and turned to me. Kid, show him your mountain shield seal. Don't hold anything back. Old Gung blinked. The mountain shield seal? Had I really picked that technique from the hidden pavilion? I felt like these two were talking in riddles, but I followed orders. Old Mu was a profound black core realm expert. He clearly saw through my hidden strength. I shifted the spiritual energy in my body. A faint blue glow erupted, wrapping around me like a solid shell. The 6th level? Old Gung gasped. Even Old Mu was stunned. He thought I was at the 5th level, but I had reached the 6th. I had only shown the 4th level during the trials. Keeping 2 levels in reserve was a habit of mine, a trump card for a rainy day. The room went quiet again. Old Mu looked ecstatic, his eyes glowing with excitement. Old Gung, however, looked miserable. He finally understood why Old Mu was willing to pay any price. If I hadn't shown this level of mastery, Old Gung never would have let me go. But now, Senior, I finally blurted out, unable to take the silence. What is going on? The two elders traded looks. Finally, Old Gung spoke. Lin Xiao, you're still too weak. Knowing too much will only hurt you. But I'll give you 2 choices. First, you can train the strongest sword. It is sharp and peerless, but it comes at a terrible cost. It will eat away at your very lifespan. Second, you can train the strongest shield. But with every breakthrough, the difficulty will increase 1,000-fold. You might stay stuck in one realm for the rest of your life. Which do you choose? They both stared at me, waiting. I realized the strongest sword represented Old Gung, and the strongest shield was Old Mu. They were putting my future in my own hands. If it were me, I started. Old Gung leaned in, hopeful. I'd choose both. Having the best sword and the best shield shouldn't be a conflict, right? Old Gung froze. He shook his head slowly. Old Mu actually laughed, though it sounded more like a scolding. You greedy brat. A man's energy is limited. Trying to do both leads to mediocrity. I'll be blunt. The ancestors of the Sword Devil sect found 2 techniques in an ancient ruin. Their rank is unknown, but they are definitely above the heaven grade. They are nearly impossible to learn. Old Mu took a breath. I was lucky enough to learn the body-refining one. At the same level, my defense is invincible. Even those in higher realms struggle to hurt me. But the cost is insane. Each breakthrough requires 10, 100, even 1,000 times more energy than a normal cultivator. Does that sound familiar? The mountain shield seal you're using is just a simplified version I created based on that technique. I was stunned. No wonder the mountain shield seal felt so much deeper than its rank suggested. And the strongest sword? I asked. Old Mu glanced at Old Gung, who remained silent. Old Gung trains in the other one. It's a sword cultivation method. Normal people absorb spiritual energy. This technique requires you to swallow raw sword chi. It grants power far beyond your level, but it wreaks havoc on your body and your life force. To put it in perspective, when Old Gung was only at the first stage of the sea rotation realm, he could kill a black core realm expert. But the price he paid was heavy. Old Mu's voice was grim. He told me that even if Old Gung were sent out to slaughter enemies, he wouldn't dare do it. Not because he was a coward, but because the backlash from his technique would kill him before the enemies could. Still, ever since Old Gung stepped into the profound core realm, no one dared to mess with the Sword Devil sect. That kind of deterrent power was something everyone envied. Now do you understand? Old Mu asked, looking me in the eye. Mastering just one of these is nearly impossible. Trying both? That's suicide. I lowered my head, acting like I was deep in thought. But they couldn't see the golden light flashing in my eyes. A technique that required swallowing raw sword chi to cultivate? That was practically tailor-made for me. With my max-level comprehension, why couldn't I handle both? Elder Gung, Elder Mu, I've made up my mind, I said, looking up with determination. I want to try cultivating both at the same time. Please, grant me this chance. Old Mu looked like he wanted to slap me. You stubborn brat. Did you hear a single word I just said? Old Gung couldn't stay silent either. Little guy, perfecting one technique is better than knowing 10,000. If you have the strongest sword, no shield in the world can stop you. Everything else becomes useless. Exactly. Old Mu nodded, then paused. Wait, Gung, what do you mean strongest sword? Don't start bragging again. You think you can pierce my shield? Keep dreaming. You want to test that theory? Old Gung's eyes sharpened, his battle intent flaring up. I watched them, feeling like I was witnessing a literal version of the unstoppable force meeting the immovable object. Seniors, please, I interrupted, raising my hands. How about this? Give me both techniques. I'll try them both out. Whichever one feels smoother and faster for me to learn, that's the one I'll stick with. They exchanged a look. It was a fair compromise. But more importantly, they saw a way to settle their lifelong rivalry. They decided that whoever's technique I learned faster would be the winner of their decades-long feud. The way they looked at me changed instantly. Their eyes burned with heat, as if they wanted me to start training right there on the spot. 2 hours later, the transmission was complete. Old Gung gave me the Heavenly Dipper Sword script, and Old Mu gave me the 9 Nether Demon Suppression Seal. Sitting in a private room within the hidden pavilion, I closed my eyes to process the information. Internally, I was ecstatic. These were 2 techniques ranked above the Heaven Grade. In the entire Sword Devil sect, there was only one low Heaven Grade technique, and it was reserved for the sect master and his heir. I had just landed a massive fortune. I stood up and bowed deeply to both elders. I was truly grateful. I'll give you 1 month, Old Gung said solemnly. It took both of us over a month just to reach the entry level. With your talent, maybe you can do it sooner. Good luck, kid, Old Mu chuckled. I'm waiting for you to officially call me master. Old Gung snorted and flicked a token toward me. It was engraved with the words Brahma Heaven. With this, you can enter the Brahma Heaven Sword Tomb whenever you want. Inner or outer areas, it doesn't matter. If you hit a wall in your training, come find me. I thanked him quickly. That token was a godsend. The sword tomb was filled with sword chi, which was exactly what I needed to feed my hungry sword intent. Then, I turned my gaze toward Old Mu. I didn't say a word, but my eyes were asking the obvious question. Old Gung gave me a gift. Where's yours? Old Mu looked embarrassed. It wasn't that he was stingy, he was just broke. Don't bother looking at him, Old Gung mocked. His technique burns through resources like a wildfire. He's the poorest old man in the sect. You? Who says I have nothing? Old Mu barked. He fished out a piece of spiritual paper and tossed it to me. Take this IOU to Old Xiao at Danqing Peak. It's worth 3 bottles of origin-restoring pills. I caught the paper and blinked. An IOU? Old Mu really was struggling. Just how much did the 9 Nether Demon Suppression Seal cost to maintain? Rare to see you being generous, Old Gung muttered. He's going to be my disciple in a month, Old Mu replied with a grin. Being generous to my own student is only natural. Keep dreaming. I should thank you for getting my disciple some pills. As they started bickering again, I slipped away. I headed straight for Danqing Peak. Origin-restoring pills were high-level medicine used by sea rotation and profound core cultivators. A single low-grade pill was worth 500 low-grade spirit stones. Someone at my level shouldn't even be able to handle the energy, but Old Mu told me that if I practiced his technique, I'd need one just to get started. As I walked, I noticed the atmosphere in the sect had changed. Since the outer disciple trials ended, my name had been moved to the inner sect list along with Shun Gao and Gu Shi. Everywhere I went, people were whispering. Did you hear? Some genius in the outer trials reached the spirit-gathering realm and manifested a sword-intent seed. He crushed everyone. A sword-intent seed? At that level? That's impossible. Only late-stage sea rotation geniuses can do that. He must have found some lucky treasure. It's just pure luck. I heard he didn't even draw his sword during the whole tournament. And get this. He supposedly said the experts on the inner sect elite rankings are nothing to him. How arrogant. He wins one outer tournament and thinks he's a god? He has no idea what the real elite are capable of. I listened to the rumors, feeling bewildered. When did I ever say any of that? I had been stuck in the hidden pavilion since the trials ended. It was a classic case of a story growing legs and running wild. People were painting a target on my back, and I hadn't even officially started my life in the inner sect yet. I felt completely helpless. After finishing my shift, I headed straight for Danqing Peak. Danqing Peak was one of the main pillars of the sect. The elders and disciples here focused almost entirely on alchemy. Because of that, it was the wealthiest peak in the entire Sword Devil sect, without question. Hey, stop right there. A guard at the base of the peak called out to me. He looked me up and down with a suspicious gaze. Since I had come straight from work, I was still wearing my ragged gravekeeper's uniform. Danqing Peak isn't a place for just anyone to wander into, the guard snapped. Which department are you from? What's a servant like you doing here? I have business with Elder Qiao, I said calmly. The guard looked at me like I was an idiot. A lowly gravekeeper wanting to see the peak master? To him, it was a hilarious joke. He opened his mouth to mock me, but he never got the chance. A blur of blue movement flashed before us. Suddenly, a woman was standing right in front of me, staring into my eyes. Wow, I finally found you, she cried out. I blinked, confused. The woman was beautiful, maybe 20 years old, with flowing blue robes and eyes that sparkled like gems. She had a refined, elegant air about her. I searched my memories, trying to figure out if I knew her. Who are you? I asked. The guard's jaw dropped. He quickly bowed low. Greetings, Senior Sister Lu. She didn't even look at him. Enough. You can go. This man is my friend. Don't you ever be rude to him again. Yes, Senior Sister Lu. The guard scrambled away, clearly stunned that a high-ranking disciple like her knew a servant like me. Once we were alone, her cold demeanor vanished. She looked at me with an intense, almost burning gaze. Junior brother, you saved my life last time, and then just disappeared. I didn't even get to thank you properly. It clicked. Oh, it's you, I said, finally remembering. Lu Wenyuan's sister, right? The last time I saw her, she was being hunted in the demon beast forest. She had been covered in blood and dirt back then. I hadn't realized that once she cleaned up, she was actually quite stunning. My name is Lu Manhwa, she said, looking relieved that I remembered. And what is your name? I've been asking around the inner sect for days, but nobody knew who I was talking about. Someone as strong as you shouldn't be a mystery. I'm Lin Xiao, I replied. Are you a member of Danqing Peak? I am. If you're looking for someone here, just tell me. I'll take you right to them. She paused, her eyes widening as the name registered. Wait, Lin Xiao? You aren't the arrogant and crazy genius from the outer trials everyone is talking about, are you? I shrugged. If that's what they're calling him, then yeah, that's probably me. Really? Lin Xiao, you're amazing, she laughed. Based on what I saw in the forest, I don't think those guys on the inner sect elite rankings stand a chance against you. I rolled my eyes at the flattery. I didn't care about rankings. I cared about progress. Senior Sister Lu, do you know Elder Qiao? I need to see him. He's my master, she said, her curiosity growing. Why do you need to see the Peak Master? I have a specific request. Can you lead the way? Of course. Follow me. We headed up the mountain. Everyone we passed greeted Lu Manhwa with deep respect, but they all gave me weird looks. They had clearly never seen their ice beauty acting so friendly with a guy my age. As we walked, I learned more about her. She was Elder Qiao's top disciple. While she wasn't the strongest fighter, her alchemy talent was legendary. She was even ranked 96th on the inner sect elite rankings. I looked at her, surprised. If someone at her level was 96th, maybe the elite weren't as scary as I thought. She seemed to read my mind. Don't underestimate the list, Lin Xiao. It's full of hidden dragons. Most of them are in the sea rotation realm. There are very few spirit-gathering cultivators like me on there. But with your strength, you'll be at the top in no time. How do I even get on the list? I asked. You just challenge someone. But you can only challenge people within 20 ranks above you. So, if you want in, you'd start by challenging someone ranked between 80 and 100. I lost interest immediately. It sounded like a lot of work for a title. It's not just a title, she added, sensing my boredom. Ranked disciples get way more resources. Plus, only the top ranks get invited to special events. Like next month, the Wuji Ancient Ruins are opening. Our sect is going, along with all the major sects of the Great Wei Dynasty. The Wuji Ancient Ruins? What's that? It's a place filled with ancient opportunities. You need a special token to enter. Actually, that sword testing stone used in the outer trials? The sect master took that from those ruins a long time ago. My heart skipped a beat. A place where treasures like that existed? So, I just need to be in the top rankings to go? Yes, she said, looking confused by my sudden change in energy. 1 second I was yawning, the next I was ready to fight the world. 10 minutes later, we reached a luxurious pavilion at the summit. An old man with gray hair sat by a massive bronze cauldron. Master, Lu Minghua said softly, this is the man who saved me. I bowed respectfully. Disciple Lin Xiao greets, Elder Qiao. Elder Qiao turned around. His eyes sharpened as he scanned me. I could feel his gaze piercing through my cultivation. To kill a C rotation expert with a single strike while only at the 4th level of spirit gathering. You are a true genius. You will certainly make waves in this sect soon. He nodded, a small smile appearing on his face. You saved my disciple. That makes you a guest of honor at Danqing Peak. If you ever need pills, come to me. As long as you bring the materials, I will personally refine them for you. Beside me, Lu Minghua gasped. I could tell by her face that her master didn't make promises like that to just anyone. This offer was massive. I knew that beyond the Sword Devil sect, countless powerful experts from across the Great Wei dynasty sought Elder Qiao for their pills. Even masters in the profound core realm would wait for months, offering staggering prices just for a chance. But whether he helped them or not depended entirely on his mood. I thought about the debt note in my pocket. Elder Qiao, I said, stepping forward. I do have a request regarding some pills. Elder Qiao and Lu Minghua both looked at me, slightly stunned. I had just arrived, and I was already asking for work. Lu Minghua probably realized then that my trip to Danqing Peak wasn't just a social visit. Tell me, Elder Qiao said, waving it off casually. If it's a common pill for the spirit gathering realm, you don't even need to provide the materials. I'll refine it for you for free this time. To him, a pill for a low-level disciple was nothing. Even if he gave them to me for free forever, Danqing Peak wouldn't even feel the loss. I want to refine the origin vine pill, I said. The master and disciple shared a look of surprise. Usually, someone at my level would use a standard spirit returning pill. The origin vine pill was typically reserved for those in the C rotation realm. They probably thought I was just planning ahead for my future cultivation. The materials for that are a bit rare, Elder Qiao noted. But it's fine. Wait here, and I'll start the fire. Elder Qiao, I have something to give you first. I pulled out the debt note and handed it over. He looked confused. With a flick of his wrist, the paper flew into his hand. As he read the words on it, his entire expression froze. He looked stunned, then annoyed, then utterly frustrated. How did you get this? He asked, his voice tight. What is your relationship with that old ghost, Old Mo? Lu Minghua stared at her master in shock. She had been with him for years and had never seen him lose his composure like this. She looked at the scrap of paper, wondering what kind of power it held. Elder Mu is like a mentor to me, I explained honestly. He had taught me the 9 Nether Demon Sealing Seal, so calling him a mentor wasn't a lie. He told me to bring this to you. He said it could be exchanged for 3 bottles of Origin Vine pills. Elder Qiao started breathing heavily, his face turning red. That old man is truly shameless, he muttered to himself. 3 bottles? Fine. Fine. I'll settle the score with him later. He squeezed his hand, and a burst of flame incinerated the note into ash. He walked over to the massive cauldron and performed a hand seal. The cauldron roared to life, and the temperature in the room skyrocketed. He began pulling materials from his storage ring. Since he didn't tell me to leave, I stayed to watch. Lu Minghua watched too, but her eyebrows soon knit together in confusion. Master, she whispered, why are you using Woodbell 3-needle flowers? And Snow Valley Lotus? And Crimson Spirit Fruit? She looked baffled. Those aren't in the recipe for Origin Vine pills. The value of those 3 ingredients alone is worth way more than 3 bottles of the pills. Elder Qiao grumbled, his voice full of lingering resentment. For ordinary pills, you don't need them. But to refine supreme-grade Origin Vine pills, they are essential. Both Lu Minghua and I gasped. Pills were ranked from low to high grade, but supreme grade was a rarity that most people never even saw. And he was making 3 whole batches of them. Old Mu's gift was worth much more than I had imagined. Elder Qiao ignored our shock and began the process. He threw the ingredients in a specific order, his hands moving in a blur of seals to control the heat and fuse the essences. It was like watching a master artist at work. 2 hours later, the lid flew open. A thick, intoxicating fragrance filled the room. 10 glowing pills floated in the air. 4 were charred black, failures, but 6 were crystal clear and perfect. Master, 6 supreme-grade pills. Manhwa cried out in admiration. She could make these pills herself, but she could only ever manage low-grade versions. Elder Qiao looked pleased. The luck is good today. I'll start the second batch immediately. While he worked, I leaned toward Manhwa. How high is Elder Qiao's rank exactly? My master is a 7th-rank alchemist, she whispered proudly. There are only 3 of them in the entire Great Wei dynasty. She explained that alchemy was a brutal path. Out of thousands of cultivators, maybe one had the talent. To reach the 7th rank required resources that even profound core experts couldn't fathom. Another 2 hours passed. The second batch was even better, 7 supreme-grade pills. Elder Qiao was beaming now, looking like he wanted to go brag to his rivals immediately. But as he reached for the ingredients for the third batch, I spoke up. Elder Qiao, I have a bold request. Manhwa looked at me with wide eyes. Her master was in the middle of a hot streak, and interrupting an alchemist during a session was a huge taboo. Junior brother, she hissed, now is not the time. It's all right, Elder Qiao said, turning to me with a curious look. What is it? Go ahead, little guy, Elder Qiao said. His face was calm. He didn't seem offended by my interruption. What is your request? I looked at the alchemy furnace and didn't blink. Elder Qiao, for this third batch, would you let me try? The room went dead silent. Both the master and the disciple stared at me like I had lost my mind. Manhwa looked genuinely panicked. She probably thought I was suicidal. Refining a supreme-grade Tingyuan pill wasn't a joke. You needed to be at least a 5th-rank alchemist to even attempt it. Even then, success was a gamble. If your luck was good, you got 1 pill. If it was bad, the expensive materials turned to ash. If you really messed up, the entire furnace could explode in your face. Elder Qiao stopped Manhwa before she could scold me. He narrowed his eyes. Have you ever studied alchemy? No, I admitted. But watching you work gave me a sudden insight. I want to see if I can pull it off. Qiao's brow furrowed. Manhwa looked like she wanted to pull me away, but she didn't dare speak. I knew what Qiao was thinking. He was wondering if old Gung had sent me here with some hidden purpose. He was trying to read between the lines. After a long moment, he stepped back. Fine, try it. He gave me the spot in front of the furnace. Alchemy usually relied on 4 things: materials, the furnace, fire, and technique. The first 2 were ready. The fire, however, had to be controlled by my own spiritual energy. Qiao watched me closely. He wanted to see how I handled the flame. That was the mark of a professional. I didn't hesitate. I walked up to the furnace. I didn't know anything about ancient alchemy traditions, but I understood the basics of logic. To me, alchemy was just extracting specific components and fusing them together. It was basically chemistry. I moved. I pushed my spiritual power into the furnace, but I didn't use a steady, controlled heat. I unleashed a violent, roaring blaze. Manhwa gasped. The fire was too wild. It looked completely out of control, but I wasn't finished. I grabbed every single ingredient on the table and threw them all into the furnace at once. Junior brother, stop, Manhwa cried out. Elder Qiao's face darkened. He hated seeing good materials wasted. He raised his hand, ready to shut down the process and kick me out. But right as he moved, I struck. I pointed my finger at the furnace and released a sharp burst of energy. It wasn't just spiritual power. It was my sword intent. 2 levels of it, sharp and overwhelming. Qiao froze. His hand stayed suspended in midair. Sword intent, he whispered, his voice cracking. 2 levels at the spirit-gathering realm. He was stunned. He quickly sent his divine sense into the furnace to see what was happening. His eyes nearly popped out of his head. In just a few minutes, the materials had already fused. There was no slow extraction. There was no gradual refining. It was just done. Your method is insane, Qiao muttered. He looked exhausted just watching me. I've never seen anything like it. It might work, but you'd probably need 1,000 failures to get 1 success. He started to console me. He told me that if I was interested in alchemy, he could teach me the proper way. Then, the furnace shuddered. The reaction stopped. The fire died out, and a thin wisp of white smoke drifted from the lid. "It's okay to fail your first time," Xiao began. Then he stopped dead. He sniffed the air. His eyes widened. "Wait, that smell. Is it done?" I asked. I genuinely didn't know. I had no experience to tell me if I'd succeeded or just made a mess. "Open it," Xiao commanded. I stepped forward and lifted the lid. Immediately, a thick, intoxicating fragrance flooded the entire room. We all leaned in to look. 10 pills sat at the bottom of the furnace. They were translucent, glowing like polished jade, and perfectly formed. "Master, they're all supreme grade," Lu Minghua screamed. She pinched her arm hard, checking if she was dreaming. She winced. It was real. 10 pills. 100% success rate. Elder Xiao looked like he had seen a ghost. His face went pale, and his breathing became heavy. He was a 7th-rank alchemist who had spent his life mastering the orthodox path. And here I was, a kid who threw everything in a pot and stirred it with sword intent, achieving a perfect result. "Why?" he whispered to himself. "Why does the traditional way even exist if this works?" His powerful aura as a profound core expert began to leak out uncontrollably. The pressure in the room became heavy. He stared at the pills, then he stared at me, his mind clearly spiraling into a total crisis. I watched the master and apprentice stand there, looking like they'd lost their souls. It hit me then. I might have shown off a little too much. Between my max-level comprehension and the modern pharmaceutical principles in my head, the results were even better than I'd imagined. I'd honestly expected a 50% success rate at best. I never thought I'd hit a perfect 10 for 10. Even so, I wasn't satisfied. During that first run, I'd noticed several small details I could optimize. If I fixed those minor flaws, what would happen then? "Kid," Elder Qiao said, his eyes locked onto mine. "Tell me again, is this really your first time refining pills?" "Yes, Elder," I said honestly. Before today, I'd never even touched a furnace. He stared at me for a full minute. I felt his powerful perception sweeping over me, checking for any hint of a lie. Finally, he looked away. He knew I was telling the truth. A 7th-rank alchemist, a man who had spent decades mastering his craft, had just been left in the dust by a beginner. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would have called it an impossible joke. "Lin Yuan," he said, his voice much softer now, almost humble. "Would you mind trying one more time?" He pulled out a fresh set of materials. I didn't hesitate. I wanted to test the improvements I'd just brainstormed, and since he was providing the expensive ingredients for free, I'd be an idiot to say no. Elder Qiao stepped back and cleared a space for me. He even went to the door to warn the other disciples that no one was to breathe in our direction, let alone interrupt. I took a deep breath, centering myself. I drew my sword. With a sharp flick, 100 streaks of red sword chi surged into the furnace. The second round began. I tossed all the ingredients in at once, just like before. Elder Qiao's spiritual sense followed every movement, desperate to see the how behind the what. Inside the furnace, my sword chi swarmed the herbs. They didn't just smash them, they sliced. They cut the materials into microscopic particles, smaller than the eye could see, before the sword chi swallowed the essence whole. Elder Qiao gasped. He could feel it now. My sword chi wasn't moving randomly. It followed a precise, rhythmic pattern that extracted the essence without damaging the core energy of the plants. Controlling 100 blades with that level of micro-precision was something no traditional alchemist could ever dream of doing with fire. Then, I released my sword intent. The chaotic energy inside the furnace instantly turned obedient. The sword chi divided the labor, working in perfect harmony to merge, condense, and form the pills. Just 1 hour later, the lid popped. The fragrance that hit us was twice as strong as the last batch. Elder Qiao stood there dazed. He didn't even need to look inside to know it was another 100% success rate. It was terrifying. "Wait, master, look at this one," Lu Minghua cried out, leaning over the furnace. "There's something on it." Elder Qiao moved closer. His eyes nearly bulged out of his head. On the surface of one translucent pill, a tiny, swirling cloud of mist had formed. "A pill cloud," he choked out. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. "A one-cloud pill." "Master, what's that?" Lu Minghua asked, her eyes wide. "Pills are ranked from low to top grade. Xiao whispered, his voice trembling. But above top grade, there is a legendary level. A pill cloud increases the effectiveness by another 20% and removes every single trace of side effects. It's perfect. Is there a two-cloud pill then? She asked, fascinated. Don't ask so many questions. Xiao snapped, though he wasn't really angry. Producing a pill cloud is something only an 8th rank alchemist can consistently do. You shouldn't even be worrying about that yet. Lu Mingyue went quiet, her brain stalling. There wasn't a single 8th rank alchemist in the entire Great Wei dynasty. That meant, in this specific moment, I had performed at a level higher than anyone in the kingdom. Elder Xiao turned to me. His eyes were burning with a terrifying intensity. Your name is Lin Yuan, right? Yes, I said, taking a wary step back. Become my true disciple, he blurted out. Before I could even open my mouth, he kept going. Don't say no yet. You have talent, but the path of alchemy is brutal without a guide. It's all about secret heritages and hidden techniques. Old man, Mu hasn't officially taken you as a disciple anyway. Why not stay here at Danxing Peak for a while? I have all the materials you could ever need. You just focus on refining. If you have questions, ask me. Just stay. He tried to sound professional, but I saw the spark of desperation in his eyes. He was playing the long game, trying to trap me with kindness. I went silent. I had to admit, he had me. I needed a massive amount of resources to cultivate the 9 nether demon seal I'd gotten from old Mu. If I stayed here, I'd have a mountain of free supplies. I just hoped he wouldn't regret it when he saw how much I could actually eat through. All right, Elder Xiao, I said, nodding. I think you're right. I'll stay. We shared a look, 2 foxes, one old and one young, both thinking we'd gotten the better end of the deal. Here, Xiao said, handing me 4 bottles of pills. These are yours. Consider the debt for the materials settled. 2 bottles held 13 top-grade pills he had made earlier. The other 2 held my latest batch, 9 top-grade pills and the single, precious 1-cloud pill. As I took them, I felt a surge of satisfaction. I'd learned a new skill and walked away with a fortune in medicine. One more thing, Elder, I asked as I tucked the bottles away. How much did those materials cost? How many pills do I need to make to turn a profit? For these? Xiao replied. If you're making top-grade pills, 3 per batch breaks even. For makes a small profit. But that 1-cloud pill you just made, that single pill is worth more than 10 batches of raw materials combined. 1 pill pays back the entire cost of the batch, Elder Xiao explained. I watched him as he spoke. His expression was a mess of conflicting emotions. The man had spent decades refining his craft, yet here I was, a newcomer, outperforming him with raw talent. It clearly stung. You just couldn't compare a normal person to a monster like me. It was bad for the ego. I stood there, momentarily stunned. Was alchemy really this profitable? That meant the batch I just finished had netted me a pure profit of 9 top-grade Tingyuan pills. If I used 3 of those to buy more materials, I'd still have 6 left over for my own stockpile. I licked my lips, already imagining the sound of spirit stones clinking into my pockets in a never-ending cycle. Elder Xiao and Lu Mingyue shared a look and rolled their eyes simultaneously. Kid, do you think everyone has a 100% success rate like you? Xiao snapped, sounding a bit grumpy. Most alchemists are lucky to just break even on pills of their own level. If you asked me to refine a rank 7 recipe, I'd be lucky to get 2 pills out of a batch. Breaking even wouldn't even be on my mind. He went on to explain that being an alchemist was a massive money sink in the early stages. You only started seeing a return on investment after reaching rank 5. In the Sword Devil sect, he was the master of alchemy peak and the only rank 7 alchemist. Out of 3,000 disciples on his peak, fewer than 500 had any talent for alchemy. Among them, only 3 reached rank 6, and fewer than 30 were rank 5. The rest? Just money-burning losers still in training. I see, I said, offering an apologetic smile. Alchemy was much harder than I'd realized. By the way, Elder Xiao, what rank is the Tingyuan pill? Rank 5, he replied. Why? I nodded slowly. A rank 7 alchemist like him only had a 60 to 70% success rate with a rank 5 recipe. And if you were refining a rank 6 recipe, what would your success rate be? Xiao hesitated. He didn't want to brag in front of me, especially if I asked him to prove it, and he failed. For rank 6? Maybe 30%. I saw an opening. Elder Xiao, I have a proposal. Your peak provides the rank 6 recipes and the materials. I'll do the refining. I'll guarantee you a minimum of 5 pills per batch. Anything beyond that, I keep. And if I'm lucky enough to produce 2 one-cloud pills, we split them. 1 for you, 1 for me. Lu Mingyue blinked rapidly, her eyes wide with shock. She looked like she wanted to warn me, but her master didn't give her the chance. Done. It's a deal, Xiao shouted. Stay right here. I'm going to go get everything ready. He bolted out of the room before either of us could say another word. He was practically vibrating with excitement. In his mind, I was getting cocky. I was a novice who didn't understand that rank 6 pills were exponentially harder than rank 5. He figured I'd fail a few times, rack up a massive debt in wasted materials, and then I'd be trapped. Even if old Mu came to get me, that old pauper wouldn't be able to afford my bail. Once he was gone, Lu Mingyue looked at me with deep concern. Junior brother Lin Yuan, I think you just walked right into my master's trap. Maybe you should leave while you can. She felt bad. I had saved her life, after all, and she knew her master's predatory look all too well. It's fine, I said calmly. I know what I'm doing. Is there a private cultivation room here? I want to practice. She saw I wasn't going to budge and sighed. Fine. Follow me. She led me to a quiet room downstairs. Once the door was shut, I pulled out a bottle of high-grade chi-returning pills I'd won from the outer sect trials. I had plenty of medicine now, so it was time to master the 9 nether demon seal. I swallowed 1 pill. It dissolved instantly into a surge of pure energy. I guided that power toward my chest, circulating it through my meridians according to the technique's instructions. But after only 1 cycle, barely a few minutes, I stopped. My face went pale. The energy was gone. The pill had been completely drained. What the? I muttered. That was a high-grade pill, and it only lasted for 1 single cycle? I finally understood what Old Mu meant when he said this technique was for the rich. It didn't just consume energy, it devoured it. Whatever, I growled, tilting my head back. I dumped the remaining 9 pills into my mouth at once. The massive surge of power hit my system like a tidal wave. My meridians throbbed with a dull, bloating pain. A normal cultivator's veins might have burst under that pressure, but thanks to my level 6 mountain toppling seal, my foundation was rock solid. I gritted my teeth and pushed through the pain. When the chi-returning pills ran out, I started on the top-grade Tingyuan pills. I refused to leave the room until every last drop of medicine was gone. 3 days passed. Outside the room, Elder Xiao was pacing, growing impatient. He had gathered every rank 6 recipe and material set in the sect. He was ready to play big. He was going to make sure I had no choice but to beg him to be my master. Inside the room, I hadn't moved in 72 hours, except to shove more pills into my mouth. Suddenly, a faint demonic seal flickered behind my back. My eyes snapped open, a deep orange light flashing within them. A subtle glow rippled across my skin. This is ridiculous, I whispered, my voice thick with frustration. 3 days, a mountain of pills, and I had only reached the late stage of the first level. A high-grade pill lasted minutes. A top-grade Tingyuan pill lasted an hour. Even the precious one-cloud pill only bought me half a day. My consumption rate was terrifying. If the first level was this hungry, how was I supposed to afford the second or third? I was out of pills, but I wasn't ready to stop. A reckless idea flashed through my mind. I gritted my teeth and made a choice. I began to intentionally break down my level 6 mountain toppling seal. As the cultivation from that technique began to dissipate, I immediately funneled that raw, refined essence into the 9 nether demon seal. I was going to see if this predator technique could swallow my old strength to fuel my new power. The answer was a resounding yes. The mountain toppling seal and the 9 nether demon seal shared the same origin. They were like 2 paths leading to the same destination. As the 9 nether technique began to circulate, it acted like a black hole. Every ounce of essence from my mountain toppling seal was sucked in without a single drop of resistance. There was no waste. The efficiency was even better than I had hoped. I waited for the breakthrough. I had practiced the mountain toppling seal for months, after all. I expected to rocket straight into the 3rd or even 4th level of this new technique. Surely my hard work deserved that much respect. Reality hit me right in the face. After devouring every bit of my old power, the 9 nether demon seal barely nudged forward. It broke through the first level and stalled halfway through the second. Then, it just stopped. "You've got to be kidding me," I yelled at the empty walls. "Give me back my old technique." My stomach dropped. No wonder Elder Mu looked so poor and haggard all the time. Who could afford to feed a monster with an appetite like this? I shook my head and sighed, forcing the frustration down. I had already started this path. There was no turning back now. If this technique wanted to eat, I would just have to find a way to keep its belly full. I stood up, and my body erupted in a series of loud, rhythmic cracks. Every bone in my frame popped like a string of firecrackers. I stared at my hands in shock. I had only been sitting for 3 days, not 3 centuries. Why was my body making so much noise? Then I felt it. Power was surging through me. My muscles felt dense and brimming with vitality. My blood felt like it was boiling with raw energy. I looked at the reinforced wall of the meditation room and felt a sudden, violent urge to punch a hole right through it. This was different. The mountain-toppling seal had never made me feel this explosive. I pushed open the door. Lu Mingwe and Elder Qiao were waiting right there. "You brat," Elder Qiao joked, though he looked relieved. "I was about to charge in there to see if you'd kick the bucket." With his cultivation level, he didn't actually need to go inside to know I was alive, but I appreciated the sentiment. "I'm sorry for making you worry, Elder," I said politely. Lu Mingyue was staring at me, her eyes narrowed in confusion. "Junior brother Lin, did you break through?" She could tell something was different. My spiritual fluctuations hadn't changed, but I looked like I had been completely reborn. Elder Qiao shifted his focus to me, his expression turning sharp. He sniffed the air, his brow furrowing. "This feeling, it's too familiar. It's just like that old man Mu. Wait, don't tell me you practiced the 9. He cut himself off, realizing Lu Mingyue was standing right there. "Did that old ghost Mu pass his technique to you?" "Elder Qiao has a sharp eye," I replied. "I am indeed practicing it." Since he didn't want to name the technique out loud, I followed his lead. "Damn that old Mu," Qiao cursed, looking genuinely angry. "He's ruining you. That trash technique is a curse. It's fine if he wants to suffer alone, but how could he drag a genius alchemist like you into that pit? It's despicable." He grabbed my shoulder. "Lin Yuan, listen to me. Give it up. Stop now before it's too late." Lu Mingyue stood to the side, completely lost. She knew they were hiding something big, but she was smart enough to keep her mouth shut and play the part of a mute. "I understand your concern, Elder," I said, giving him a deflective answer. "You don't understand anything." Qiao huffed. "Fine, I'll deal with Mu later. For now, we have work to do. Let's go to the alchemy room." He practically dragged me down the hall. Ever since he watched me refine pills the last time, he had been struck by inspiration. He was obsessed. He wanted to watch me work until he found the spark he needed for his own breakthrough. I was his golden ticket, and he wasn't letting go. When we reached the lab, Lu Mingyue tried to follow us in, but Qiao barked at her. "Where do you think you're going? You aren't ready to see how he works. It'll only mess up your own foundation. Go refine 4 bottles of purifying pills. I'll check them when I'm done." He slammed the door in her face. Lu Mingyue stood in the hallway, feeling abandoned. 2 days ago, she was his favorite disciple. Now, she was just the smelly girl who was in the way. "Fine," she muttered, stomping away. "I'll go refine them." Half a month passed in a blur. During those 15 days, Elder Qiao only emerged a few times, looking dazed and frantic, before rushing back inside. I hadn't been seen at all. Meanwhile, at the hidden pavilion, Elder Mu was losing his mind. His face was like a thundercloud, and a terrifying aura radiated from his body. "That old bastard Qiao," Mu hissed. "We agreed to trade the kid every 15 days. It's been 20. Where's my disciple?" He knew Qiao was a rule breaker, but this was too much. With a cold snort, Mu vanished from the entrance of the pavilion. He moved so fast that he didn't even leave an afterimage. He was heading straight for Danqing Peak. He tore through the air like a meteor. As he approached the peak, he threw out a hand seal, forcing the defensive barrier to part for him. "Old Gung, get out here." His roar echoed through the entire sword gallery. Thousands of disciples looked up in terror. Who would dare scream like that at their leader? But when they saw a man floating in the sky, They immediately bowed their heads. A profound core realm expert. No one dared to breathe. Within seconds, another figure shot into the sky to meet him. It was Elder Gong. His usually stoic face was twisted with rage. Old Mu, I was just about to come looking for you. Gong roared. Looking for me? Mu shouted back, his hair bristling. Where's my disciple? We had a deal. It's been 20 days. You're the one breaking your word. Gong stared at him, momentarily stunned. Then, his face turned even redder. Bullshit. Gong yelled. You're trying to frame me? Lin Yuan has been with you for 20 days. I haven't seen him once. You're the one hiding him, you old thief. The two elders faced off in the sky, their auras clashing like physical weights. Down below, the disciples were caught in the middle of a literal storm. It felt like standing in the heart of a hurricane, where one wrong move meant being shredded by stray bolts of lightning. Wait, Lin Yuan isn't with you. Both old men spoke at the exact same time. The words were identical. They froze, their brows furrowing deep as the murderous tension between them evaporated instantly. They had known each other for nearly a century. They knew when the other was joking and when things were serious. Seeing the genuine rage and confusion on each other's faces, they realized something was terribly wrong. After I finished teaching him my techniques, I assumed the kid was staying with you for the first half of the month, Elder Mu explained, his voice turning deadly serious. When 20 days passed and I hadn't seen him, I came here to drag him back. He hasn't been at the Brahma Sword Seed once, Elder Gung replied, his eyes narrowing. I thought he was with you. They looked at each other, the same question burning in their minds. Where the hell was I? Elder Gung didn't waste words. He turned and shot back toward the sword gallery. 10 minutes later, he returned, his face darker than a thundercloud. Someone saw Lin Yuan heading toward Danqing Peak over 2 weeks ago. Gung spat out, every word sounding like it was being ground between his teeth. He never came back out. Elder Mu's eyes went wide. Danqing Peak? That's where I sent him with my IOU note. Damn it. Don't tell me that old ghost Xiao kidnapped my student. It clicked for him immediately. I must have gone there to trade the note for pills, but why would Xiao keep me? Did he realize I had a talent for body tempering? Or sword cultivation? Maybe the kid has a talent for alchemy, too, Gung muttered grimly. That old thief. Mu roared. He's trying to snatch a bargain while we're busy fighting. No way. I'm going there right now. I'm coming with you, Gung said, and he was already a streak of light in the sky. Lately, the elders of the Sword Devil sect had noticed something strange. High-level pills, which were usually rarer than dragon teeth, were suddenly everywhere. As long as you had the contribution points, the stock never ran out. Even weirder, the quality was a grade higher than anything they'd seen before. Everyone assumed Elder Qiao had reached a new level in his alchemy. On top of that, the mission hall was flooded with requests for rare herbs and fruits, with rewards boosted by 30%. The disciples were thrilled, praying this golden age would never end. Elder Gung and Elder Mu touched down on Danqing Peak. They didn't want to start a war immediately, so they swept the area with their spiritual senses. They found me quickly. I was in the main pavilion at the summit. We caught him red-handed, Mu hissed. Let's see how Qiao explains this. But before they could storm in, a series of frantic wails echoed from inside the building. Lin Yuan, my friend, please, just leave. My Danqing Peak isn't big enough for a god like you. Stop. Don't touch those materials. Those are for the inner peak competition. Not those either. Please, I'm begging you, let me go. High-grade materials take time to gather. I promise, the moment they arrive, I'll deliver them to you personally. Just stop tormenting my disciples. Mu and Gung exchanged a look of pure bewilderment. What was happening? It sounded like Qiao was trying to evict me, not kidnap me. They landed in front of the hall. Elder Qiao sensed them immediately and came flying out, looking like a man who had aged 10 years in a week. Old Mu, thank the heavens. Take your disciple away. If he stays one more day, Danqing Peak is finished. Qiao shouted. Then he saw Elder Gung and blinked. Old Gung, why are you out of your cave? He's the kid's other master, Mu said coldly. What do you think he's doing here? Qiao gasped, but then he remembered my sword intent and nodded. It made sense that a monster like me would attract Gung's attention. Where is he? Gung demanded. Inside. Right inside. Take him. Now. Please, Xiao urged, letting out a massive sigh of relief. He looked like a man who had just been granted a stay of execution. What is he even doing in there? Mu asked, confused. Alchemy, obviously. Wait, you don't know? Xiao started to explain, but a massive tremor shook the entire pavilion. His face went pale. Oh no, not again. Don't tell me he's... He didn't finish the sentence. He bolted back into the hall, with Mu and Gung right on his heels. When we burst into the alchemy room, the heat hit us like a furnace. Steam and fire hissed from the vents of a massive cauldron. I was standing right in front of it, drenched in sweat that evaporated the second it hit my skin. I was focused, my hands moving in a blur as I controlled the flames. The cauldron was clanging and vibrating so hard the floor was shaking. Is he actually refining something? Mu whispered. He'd seen masters work before, but he'd never seen a cauldron act like it was trying to explode. You're acting like you don't know your own student, Xiao grumbled. Then his eyes drifted to a nearby table, and he let out a strangled scream. My spirit leaves. My frost fruits. You brat. Did you throw all of them in there at once? Just a second. I grunted, not even looking up. I hadn't even noticed the two elders standing there. It's almost done. Xiao looked like he wanted to cry over his lost materials, but he also couldn't take his eyes off the cauldron. He was terrified, yet desperately curious. Xiao, talk to me, Mu whispered. What the hell is he making that requires this much energy? Xiao swallowed hard and squeezed out 3 words. A rank 7 pill. The room went silent. Mu and Gung stared at him like he'd grown a second head. A rank 7 pill? From a kid who had never touched a furnace before this week? You're full of it, Mu snapped. Even you only have a 50-50 shot at a rank 7. My disciple doesn't know the first thing about alchemy. Xiao gave him a look of pure pity. He realized then that these two had no idea what kind of monster they were actually dealing with. Where did this kid Lin Xiao come from? He had been hiding his talents deep. This was actually his 3rd attempt at refining a rank 7 pill. He had already burned through almost every spirit herb and rare treasure in my Danqing Peak storehouse. Elder Xiao was fuming, his face red with frustration. Old Mu and Old Gung stood there, completely stunned. They couldn't believe their ears. Old Mu, shut up. It's the critical moment. Xiao barked. He didn't take his eyes off the cauldron for a second. Sizzle. The cauldron gave one last violent shudder before finally stabilizing. Then, everything went silent. The flames beneath the furnace vanished. I let out a long, shaky breath. My body felt like it was falling apart. The difficulty of a rank 7 recipe was on a completely different level. It was too much. With my current cultivation, I was pushing my limits to the breaking point. If I were in the Seawheel realm, this would have been much easier. I wouldn't have failed those first 2 times. I made a mental note. After this, I had to focus on leveling up my cultivation base. Old Mu, Old Gung, what are you two doing here? I asked, finally noticing the 2 elders standing right next to me. How could we not come? Old Mu grumbled, looking dissatisfied. If we didn't show up, the deadline Gung and I agreed on would have passed. Elder Xiao looked like he wanted to cry. Lin Xiao, my young friend, you really know how to waste things. Those materials were incredibly hard to find. I told you, a rank 7 pill is too early for you. Why the rush? You could have waited until you reached the late stage of the Seawheel realm. Now look. He trailed off, assuming I had failed again. Rank 7 materials were priceless treasures, nearly impossible to replace. Elder Xiao, I succeeded this time, I said with a small smile. Next time these materials. Wait, what did you say? Succeeded? What succeeded? Xiao froze mid-sentence. I could see the hair on his arms standing up. The profound void breakthrough pill. It's done. I think I got at least one, I said happily. The cauldron wasn't open yet, but after practicing thousands of times over the last 2 weeks, I had a feel for it. Xiao just stood there, paralyzed by the shock. Going from the depths of despair to heaven in a split second was a hell of a ride. Old Mu and Old Gung weren't doing any better. The profound void breakthrough pill? That was a legendary rank 7 medicine. It was the ceiling of difficulty for its rank. It was the pill everyone dreamed of because it helped a cultivator break through the massive bottleneck from the Seawheel realm to the profound core realm. Countless geniuses throughout history had spent their entire lives stuck at that peak, unable to take that final step. This pill increased the success rate. A low-grade pill added 10%, mid-grade added 20%, and high-grade added 30%. As for top-grade, nobody knew, because almost no one had ever seen one. I didn't wait for them to finish their heart attacks. I carefully opened the lid. I was anxious too. Because I'd failed twice, I hadn't followed the recipe exactly on the third try. I had followed my gut, throwing in a bunch of extra ingredients with similar medicinal properties in a do-or-die gamble. Luck was on my side. A faint purple light shot out from the furnace. Immediately, a thick, mouth-watering aroma filled the entire room. The three old men scrambled to look inside. 2 crystal-clear pills were resting in the center of the cauldron. 2. You actually made 2. They shouted in unison. This was a pill that could create a profound core expert. Even a standard rank 7 alchemist wouldn't dare guarantee a single success in a batch. Old Xiao, check the quality. Quickly, Old Mu urged. It's his third batch. What quality are you expecting? Old Gung rolled his eyes. But Elder Xiao didn't answer. His eyes were bulging. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. One chi pill missed. The room went dead silent again. Old Mu and Old Gung looked like they'd lost their souls. They had heard of top-grade pills, but a 1 chi pill missed version was the stuff of legends. Was Lin Xiao even human? Xiao, you old ghost. How much is a pill of this level worth? Old Mu swallowed hard. Xiao shook his head, unable to even put a price on it. Even if you added up all the materials from the 3 failed batches, it wouldn't buy a fraction of one of these. No kidding, Old Mu snorted. I could give you 3 batches of materials right now, and you couldn't dream of making a pill mist version. Xiao didn't argue. He couldn't do it. Even an 8th rank master probably couldn't. While they were dazed, I put the pills into 2 jade bottles. I tossed one to Elder Xiao. Elder Xiao, this one is for you. Hey, be careful, you little ancestor. Xiao screamed, lunging to catch it with both hands like it was his own child. This wasn't just a pill. For a high-level alchemist, it was a masterpiece to be studied. Lin Xiao, are you really giving this to me? He was stunned. We had a deal, but this pill was too valuable. He knew better than anyone that our Sword Devil sect only had 6 profound core experts. This pill basically guaranteed a 7th. It changed the fate of the entire sect. A deal is a deal, I said, smiling. I wasn't hurting. If I found more materials, I could make more. Besides, this was only 1 chi quality. There were higher levels above that. Building a solid relationship with Elder Xiao was worth way more than a single pill, especially after I'd turned his peak upside down for 2 weeks. Fine, I'll accept this favor, Xiao said, his voice trembling with emotion. He glanced at Old Mu and smirked. Kid, you're 1,000 times more generous than your stingy half-master over here. I quickly stashed the pill into my storage ring. The space was getting tight, but I made room for a bottle like that. Elder Xiao looked like a new man. His face glowed with joy, and the pathetic, wailing mess he'd been seconds ago was gone. In his eyes, that single pill with the pill mist was worth more than everything I'd blown up over the last 2 weeks. Old Mu and Old Gung watched me, clearly stunned. If they were in my shoes, they wouldn't have been so generous. But they didn't object. They knew giving it to Xiao was the smartest move. Elder Xiao, I said with a grin. Once you gather enough materials for the next batch, let me know. Our partnership continues. Absolutely. It's a deal. Xiao barked back instantly. He thought he was facing a massive loss, but he'd ended up with a huge profit. Plus, as my cultivation grew, my alchemy would only get better. He was probably already imagining the treasures we'd make next. He didn't even mention taking me as a disciple anymore. He knew he wasn't qualified. Lin Xiao, forget alchemy for a second. Old Mu interrupted, looking anxious. My deadline with Old Gung is only 10 days away. You've spent all your time at the furnace. When are you going to actually practice my techniques? He was worried. He knew I had already grasped 2% of my sword intent. If I started focusing on Old Gung's sword arts, I'd make progress way too fast. He wasn't ready to give up on a body-refining genius like me. Old Gung saw him panicking and smirked. He looked like a man who had already won. Old Mu, who said I haven't been practicing? I asked. I've been working hard on the body-refining art. It's the sword technique I haven't touched yet. My plan is to spend the next 10 days inside the Brahma sword tomb to focus entirely on that. Old Moo's withered face broke into a massive grin. Good boy. Very good. Old Gung, however, nearly jumped out of his skin. Lin Xiao? That's blatant favoritism. Why weren't you practicing the sword while you were refining pills? If I did what I said, Old Gung was going to lose the bet. He couldn't accept that. Elder Gung, look around, I said helplessly. Where was I supposed to find sword chi to practice with on this peak? I didn't tell him I'd used up the 1,000 strands of sword chi I'd stored earlier just to keep the alchemy fires going. I was empty. Old Moo tried to hide his triumph, but I turned back to him. Old Moo, I did make some progress with the 9 nether demon sealing seal these past few days. Do you want to check it? Old Moo rolled his eyes. Check what? I know how hard that seal is to learn. You were busy making pills. If you even managed to start the first level, it would be a miracle. Just show me what you've got. I nodded and circulated the 9 nether demon sealing seal. The air grew heavy. A 3-meter-tall yellow demon seal manifested behind my back. My eyes flashed with a cold, divine light. A crushing, freezing pressure suddenly slammed down, covering everything within 30 feet. Wait, this is impossible. Old Moo's jaw hit the floor. The 3rd level? The middle stage of the 3rd level? Where did you get the resources to push it that far? Elder Xiao and Old Gung froze, staring at me like I was a monster. This was beyond talent. It was terrifying. As for resources, I said with a wry smile, I used up almost every pill I made recently to get there. This technique is a bottomless pit. Ha ha, a genius. A true genius. Old Moo roared with laughter. Old Gung, how are you going to beat me now? I told you, my eyes never fail me. Old Moo was gloating so hard Elder Xiao glared at him, but Old Gung's face just fell. He hadn't expected such a massive reversal. 10 days, right? Old Gung's voice went cold. Suddenly, his hand blurred and gripped my shoulder. Old Moo, the kid said the next 10 days belonged to me. Before Old Moo could even protest, the world blurred. Old Gung and I vanished. Look at him run. Old Moo laughed, feeling better than he had in years. He'd won bets against everyone in the sect except Old Gung. This was his moment. 10 days won't be enough. That disciple is mine. Meanwhile, Old Gung carried me deep into the Brahma sword tomb. We flew past the outer areas until the atmosphere turned suffocatingly grim. The tombs here were massive. The air didn't just smell like dust, it smelled like cold steel. We are in the inner circle, Old Gung explained, his voice tight. He was clearly still reeling from Old Moo's lead. These tombs belong to former core disciples and true disciples. There are over 2,000 graves here. Each one is packed with sword chi at the sea transformation realm level. This is where you will train. I won't let you down, Elder, I promised. The energy here was incredible. It was exactly what I needed. Old Gung nodded, looking thoughtful. He hesitated for a long time before speaking again. Little guy, I'm going to give you a real opportunity. Whether you can handle it or not depends on your own luck. Just remember, if you can't take it, scream for me. I'll pull you out. I blinked. Handle what? He sounded like he was sending me into a meat grinder. Elder, what are you? I didn't finish. Old Gung swept his hand toward the sky. A surge of feminine, powerful sword intent erupted, chilling me to the bone. I felt like a speck of dust in front of a hurricane. It was overwhelming. As the sun set, he swung his hand down, and the world screamed with the sound of 1,000 dying blades. The ground began to rumble, a low growl that vibrated through the soles of my boots. Around me, the massive tombs of the Brahma sword tomb started to shake. One by one, long swords pulled themselves free from the earth, hovering in the air. Vibrant, multicolored sword chi swirled around them like angry spirits. Then, in a single, terrifying motion, every blade turned. Thousands of cold metal points were aimed directly at my heart. A cold sweat broke out on my back. I felt a sense of crisis rising from every direction. This was impossible. The swords were moving on their own. Swish. The blade closest to me lashed out, sending a wave of sword chi screaming toward my neck. I blurred into motion, using my movement technique to dodge, but my movement triggered a chain reaction. The moment I shifted, 10,000 swords moved with me. A storm of sword chi erupted, slashing through the air to hunt me down. I was fast, but I was only at the 4th level of the spirit gathering realm. There were too many. I couldn't dodge them all. Several streaks of sword chi pierced through my defenses and slammed into my body. I gasped, my entire frame shuddering as I stumbled. The pain was agonizing. It felt like someone was pouring boiling lead into my veins and scrubbing my bones with salt. Because I faltered for just a second, more sword chi found its mark. The pain doubled, then tripled. 9 nether demon sealing seal. I ward. A golden demonic seal erupted from my chest, expanding into a glowing barrier. The incoming sword chi slammed against the shield but couldn't break through. I finally took a ragged breath. As expected of a heaven-grade technique, once the seal was active, even sword chi at the sea transformation realm couldn't touch me. Any other spirit-gathering cultivator would have been shredded to pieces by now. Don't just stand there. Old Gung's voice boomed from somewhere above. Blocking is useless. Enduring is useless. You must consume. Use the Heavenly Chief sword scripture to refine that chi. Do you think your seal will last forever? Once your energy runs out, you're a dead man. His words snapped me out of my daze. He was right. I could feel my spiritual energy draining at an alarming rate to maintain the seal. If I didn't act now, I'd be defenseless. I sat cross-legged and activated the Heavenly Chief sword scripture. Immediately, the chaotic sword chi inside my body seemed to hear a command. It stopped tearing at my insides and began to flow in a specific rhythm. The scripture was brutal. To build a sword heart, sword bones, and sword meridians, you had to suffer. I felt my bones being scraped, my heart being squeezed, and my meridians snapping and reforming. It was the pain of 1,000 deaths. Sweat poured off my forehead in heavy droplets. Who the hell invented this technique? I cursed internally. Is there no such thing as a comfortable way to get strong? I gritted my teeth, repeating a mantra in my head. No pain, no gain. No pain, no gain. 100 meters away, Old Gung watched me from the air. He was ready to jump in the second I showed signs of collapsing. He watched me endure the torture with a silent nod. He knew that only in the face of death could a person's true potential be unlocked. He just didn't know how long I could last. 1 day passed, then 2, then 3. Old Gung expected 3 days to be my absolute limit. He planned to let me rest for 2 days before starting again. But I didn't stop. Even when I looked like I was on the verge of a total breakdown, I forced myself to keep going. My understanding of the Heavenly Chief sword scripture was evolving at a pace that even shocked the old man. For days, 5, 6, 7. On the 8th day, I finally opened my eyes and stood up. I didn't stop because I was tired. I stopped because the air was empty. I had sucked every single drop of sword chi out of the inner circle. I looked at Old Gung, my shirt torn and my muscles lean and hardened. I looked at Old Gung, my shirt torn and my muscles lean and hardened. Elder, is there anywhere else I can train? Old Gung's jaw dropped. He looked at the wreckage of the Brahma sword tomb. Thousands of swords lay scattered on the ground like discarded toys, dull and lifeless. There wasn't a spark of energy left in them. He didn't speak for a long time. I glanced toward the outer perimeter of the tomb. Maybe I could just head to the outer area and finish those off too? Get out, Old Gung barked, though there was a hint of a smile in his eyes. If I let you stay, there won't be a Brahma sword tomb left for the rest of the sect. If you want more, go to the Wuji ancient ruins. It's opening soon. That's the real trial for someone like you. The Wuji ancient ruins. This was the second time I'd heard of it. Senior Sister Lu had mentioned it before. If even Old Gung was recommending it, I had to go. But what about the bet between you and Elder Mo? I asked. Forget that old fossil, Old Gung muttered. Just go. I bowed deeply and sprinted away, my body feeling lighter than air. Old Gung watched me go, picking up one of the drained swords. He shook his head in disbelief. These blades were so depleted they would need 20 years to recover their energy. I was a monster. I threw on my inner disciple robes and raced across the sect grounds. I didn't hide my cultivation this time. My spiritual power surged through me, radiating the aura of a spirit-gathering realm perfection cultivator. The Heavenly Chief sword scripture was incredible. As long as there was energy to consume, the progress was lightning fast. I had also discovered something Old Gung didn't even know. Combining the 9 nether seal with the sword scripture didn't just dull the pain. It actually boosted the refinement speed. I was no longer just a gravekeeper. I was a predator, and it was time to show the sect exactly what I had become. I discovered a lucky coincidence during my training. After 8 days of bitter cultivation, I managed to stabilize my foundation and push my strength all the way to the spirit-gathering realm perfection. I still had over 1,000 strands of sword chi left in my body that I hadn't refined yet. It wasn't that my treasure box couldn't handle them. It was that I felt I had hit a wall. Even if I refined every last drop, I wouldn't be able to break through to the Sea of Wheels realm without a specific opportunity. The Wuji Ancient Ruins was likely that opportunity. After sprinting for 15 minutes, I finally arrived at the foot of Tianshan Peak. This was the tallest, most majestic mountain in the Sword Devil sect. Legend had it that a dragon's spirit vein was suppressed beneath it, making it the heart of the sect's spiritual energy. The concentration of power here was so high that the other 8 peaks combined couldn't match it. Only the sect's high-level elders and the disciples on the inner sect elite list were allowed to live here. If you could make it onto that list, you earned the right to cultivate on Tianshan Peak. Compared to anywhere else, this place was a paradise. It was no wonder every inner disciple was willing to break their necks just to get a spot. "Senior brother, do you need the latest inner sect elite list register?" A voice called out. Before I even set foot on the mountain, an outer disciple stopped me. I raised an eyebrow. They actually sold registers for this. "Give me one," I said, tossing him a low-grade spirit stone. The disciple caught it, his eyes lighting up as he handed me a small book. "If you have any questions, senior brother, just ask. I know this place like the back of my hand." I flipped through the pages casually. "If I want to challenge someone on the elite list, do I just go find them?" "Yes," he replied. "Find them, issue the challenge, and if you win, you take their rank and their residence." I pointed to a specific name on the list. "Do you know where this person lives?" The disciple leaned in to look. His eyes widened. "Zhu Jingyi, rank 80? Senior brother, he's at Spirit Gathering Realm Perfection and practices the Savage Bull Body refining technique. They say he has 3,000 pounds of raw strength in one hand. You aren't planning to challenge him, are you?" He looked at me with pure shock. I was a fresh face, not even on the list, and I was aiming for the top 80 right out of the gate. He clearly thought I was being suicidal. "Is there a problem?" I asked. "I thought you could challenge anyone within 20 ranks of your target." "You can," he explained quickly. "But each disciple only gets one challenge opportunity per month. If you lose, you have to wait until next month to try again." I frowned. Only one shot. If I failed, I'd miss the entrance for the Wuji Ancient Ruins. Those spots were limited, and without a high enough rank, I wouldn't even be considered. "Wait," the disciple added, seeing my expression. "If you win, you can keep challenging higher ranks immediately." I gave him a flat look. "Could you maybe not pause for dramatic effect next time? Lead the way to his house." "Senior brother, I'd love to, but outer disciples have a limit on how many times we can enter Tianshan Peak per month." I didn't let him finish. I tossed a small pouch at him. He caught it, and the weight made his jaw drop. He opened it to find 100 low-grade spirit stones. For an outer disciple who barely made 20 stones a month, this was a half-year salary. "Lead me there today, and this is your reward," I said calmly. During my time at Danqing Peak, I had refined a massive amount of pills. While I ate most of them, I had old Xiao sell the rest. I had nearly 10,000 spirit stones in my storage ring now. 100 stone tip was nothing to me. "Senior brother, you're too kind," he stammered, his eyes glowing. "Forget today. You could ask me to lead you around every day for a month for this." We headed up the mountain. As we climbed, I felt the spiritual energy thickening, pressing against my skin. "Is this your first time on Tianshan Peak?" the disciple asked. "Yes," I replied. "I only became an inner disciple a few days ago." He stumbled slightly. He looked at me like I was a newborn calf trying to fight a tiger. The Sword Devil sect had nearly 30,000 inner disciples, and the elite list only took the top 100. The difficulty was insane, yet here I was, a rookie, rushing to pick a fight. "By the way, what is your name, senior brother?" he asked politely. "Lin Yuan. And yours?" "I'm Zhang Wait. Lin Yuan." He laughed nervously. That's the same name as the guy who took first place in the outer sect entrance test recently. What a coincidence. That was me, I said. Zhang froze mid-step. What? You're that Lin Yuan. Is there another one? I asked. He looked at me with newfound respect. He hadn't seen the test himself, but rumors had spread like wildfire that the top student, Lin Yuan, had strength that far surpassed the other geniuses. He led me to a small building halfway up the mountain. There was no name on the door, just the number 80. Every elite list disciple had their own private courtyard equipped with a spirit-gathering array. The higher the rank, the better the resources. Senior Brother Lin, should I go inside and announce your challenge? Zhang asked. No need, I said. Before he could ask how I planned to start the fight, I took a deep breath. I stepped forward and let out a roar that echoed across the mountainside. Zhu Zhengyi, get your ass out here and fight. The shout was like a thunderclap. Heads popped out of nearby windows. Disciples walking on the paths stopped dead in their tracks. Holy crap, who is that? Someone whispered. That's incredibly arrogant. Doesn't he know Senior Brother Zhu has a hair-trigger temper? He's challenging Zhu Zhengyi? Come on, let's go watch. This is going to be a bloodbath. I had heard rumors about Zhu Zhengyi. People said he'd gained some deep insights recently and was on the verge of breaking through to the Sea of Wheels realm. Challenging him now seemed like a death wish to the crowd gathering around us. Suddenly, the door to Building 80 creaked open. A massive, towering figure stepped out, his footsteps heavy enough to vibrate the ground. Zhang didn't stick around. He scrambled back several meters, hiding behind me. He was just an ordinary outer disciple and had no intention of getting caught in a clash between titans. You're the one barking at my door? Zhu Zhengyi growled, his eyes locking onto mine. I'm here to challenge you, I said, cutting straight to the point. Do you accept, or are you busy? I didn't have time to waste. I had a long list of names to get through today. Zhu Zhengyi looked at my lean frame and let out a mocking laugh. He raised a fist the size of a dinner plate. With that tiny body, you think you can take a single punch from me? I'll take that as a yes, I replied calmly. You're looking for death, kid. His eyes went cold. He could tell I was at the peak of the spirit-gathering realm, just like him. But he clearly thought he was special. He probably believed that an elite list disciple was on a different level than a regular inner disciple. He looked like he wanted to laugh. To him, even an early Sea of Wheels opponent wasn't a threat, let alone me. Make your move, I said. You asked for it. Stay down. Zhu Zhengyi roared and lunged forward. His movements were heavy but fast. As he threw a massive right hook, the phantom image of a raging bull appeared behind him, charging with terrifying momentum. The air pressure alone forced the nearby disciples to jump back. It's the wild bull punch, someone shouted. I heard that with his inner energy, that strike carries over 3,000 pounds of force. Is he serious? That's insane. That's why he's rank 80. That challenger is finished. The crowd was already mourning for me. I was a new face, and in their eyes, I was just another arrogant rookie. They saw these challenges every day, and 99% of them ended in a bloody mess for the challenger. Zhu Zhengyi didn't hold back. He wanted to make an example out of me to stop others from bothering him every month. His fist whistled through the air, booming like thunder. I stood my ground, unmoving. To the spectators, I looked frozen with fear. Boom. A dull thud echoed across the clearing. The crowd gasped, but not for the reason they expected. The scene was bizarre. I had simply reached out a single palm and caught his 1,000-pound fist like it was a falling leaf. The shockwave sent Zhu Zhengyi stumbling back 7 or 8 steps. I didn't move an inch. I just stood there, my expression bored. Your strength is a bit lacking, I said. I wasn't even trying to be mean. Honestly, his punch felt weaker than the recoil I dealt with while practicing my mountain seal. It was all bark and no bite. Again, Zhu Zhengyi's face turned serious. He realized I wasn't the easy target he'd imagined. Sorry, I whispered. I'm in a hurry. Before he could even blink, I vanished. A split second later, I appeared a foot away from him. His eyes widened in pure terror, but he was too slow. Crack. I delivered a kick that sounded like a cannon blast. Zhu Zhengyi flew through the air, soaring dozens of meters before slamming into the dirt. He didn't get up. He was out cold. I pulled my leg back and looked over at Zhang. Let's go. Next one is Wu Zongcheng, rank 60. The clearing was deathly silent. Rank 80 had been taken down in a single move. There's a huge difference between defeating someone and knocking them unconscious instantly without giving them a chance to resist. It meant my strength far surpassed his. Is he really just spirit gathering realm? Someone whispered. He has to be hiding his true cultivation. Who is this guy? As I walked away, one of the other elite disciples called out, "Wait, what's your name?" Lin Yuan. I replied without looking back. The name hit the crowd like a bomb. Lin Yuan? The guy who took first place in the entrance test? I heard he was a monster. A large group of disciples started following us. They didn't want to miss the show. Usually, people only challenge the bottom tiers of the elite list. Seeing someone climb the ranks in a single day was a rare treat. Senior brother Lin, that was incredible. Zhang Ong chirped, practically vibrating with excitement. You stunned everyone. He was just weak, I said. Tell me about this Wu Zongcheng. I didn't care about Zhu Jingyi. If the rules allowed it, I would have skipped straight to the top 10. Wu Zongcheng is a core disciple of the Red Flame Peak, Zhang Ong explained. He uses a blazing sword style that's extremely fast and violent. He used to be stuck in the 90s, but last month his strength exploded. He climbed all the way to rank 60 in one go. I nodded. A swordsman? That would make things even easier. A few minutes later, we arrived at the next courtyard, followed by a growing tail of spectators. I looked at the building, hoping the guy was home. I didn't want to have to pick a new target. Wu Zongcheng, I yelled, putting on my best arrogant persona. Get out here and fight. I needed him angry. I needed him to come at me with everything so I could end it quickly. I had to finish these challenges and get back to training. The upcoming Ancient Ruins trial would bring together geniuses from across the entire Great Wei dynasty. I knew better than anyone that in this world, there is always a bigger fish. I needed to be ready. You never know what comes first in this world, a lucky break or a sudden crisis. The crowd around me grew as my shout echoed through the courtyard. A moment later, a tall figure holding a long sword leaped down from the balcony of the building marked for rank 60. I looked him over and blinked. He looked incredibly familiar. Is that you, Lin Xiao? The man asked, his anger vanishing as he squinted at me. I remembered him now. Senior brother Wu? Junior brother. It really is you. Wu Zongcheng cried out. His eyes actually started to well up with tears. I've been looking everywhere for you. I've searched so hard. Before I could react, he rushed forward and pulled me into a massive bear hug. He was laughing and crying at the same time, looking completely ridiculous. Take it easy, senior brother, I said, feeling incredibly awkward. People are watching. Please, have some dignity. I couldn't exactly push him away. As the saying goes, you don't hit a man who's smiling at you. I knew he'd be happy to see me, but I didn't expect this level of drama. This was the same guy I had met at the trading plaza a while back. I'd given him some pointers on his blazing sword style in exchange for 1,000 spirit stones. I never expected to run into him like this. The spectators were losing their minds. What the hell is this? One of them muttered. Is this a family reunion? Where's the fight? They had their blood up for a battle, and we were giving them a soap opera. Wu Zongcheng didn't care about their stares. After we chatted for a minute, he realized why I was there. Junior brother Lin, I concede, he announced loudly. Come on, let's go challenge the next guy together. He grabbed my arm and started dragging me forward. The crowd went silent. Just like that? He gave up? Senior brother Wu, maybe we should at least trade a few moves? I suggested with a strained smile. No need, Wu Zongcheng said quickly. I still haven't fully mastered the pointers you gave me last time. I know better than to bite off more than I can chew. I looked at him with newfound respect. His talent might have been average, but his self-awareness was top tier. Since he was being so enthusiastic, I didn't have the heart to turn him down. Our little parade set off for the next target, Ku Yuanliang, ranked 40th. With Wu Zongcheng leading the way, Zhang Ong was relegated to a mere spectator. Junior brother Lin, Ku Yuanliang is strong, Wu Zongcheng warned me as we walked. He's in the first stage of the Sea of Wheels realm. He uses the falling rain sword style. His talent is excellent, and he's already mastered 1% of rain intent. His attacks are relentless, like a constant downpour. The best way to beat him is to break through his rhythm at a single point. Our Spark Prairie move should be perfect for that. I didn't interrupt him. I appreciated the gesture, But did I really need a tactical analysis for a first-stage Sea of Wheels opponent? I just wanted to get it over with. We reached the 40th ranks building. Wu Zongqing stepped forward and shouted, "Ku Yuanliang, get out here. We need to beat you quickly so we can move on to the next house." A figure blurred out of the building and landed in front of us. When he saw it was Wu Zongqing, Ku Yuanliang's eyes filled with disdain. "You've got a big mouth, junior brother Wu," Ku Yuanliang sneered. "Did you hit your head? Do you really think you're qualified to challenge me?" "Who said I was the one challenging you?" Wu Zongqing looked at him like he was an idiot, then turned to me. "Go get him, Lin Xiao. I believe in you. You'll win within 10 moves, no 5. Ku Yuanliang frowned, looking at me with confusion. He didn't recognize me. Most inner disciples of his level didn't bother watching outer disciple trials, so my name meant nothing to him. "Well, you going to fight or not?" Wu Zongqing pressured him. Ku Yuanliang glanced at the growing crowd. He didn't have a choice. If he refused, his reputation would be trashed. Besides, he wanted to punish me for my arrogance. "Fine. Let's see what kind of skill you have to back up that talk," Ku Yuanliang said, drawing his sword. His spiritual energy surged, and a sharp battle intent rose around him. The disciples nearby backed off to give us space. "Aren't you going to draw your sword?" he asked, his voice cold. "No need," I replied casually. The crowd gasped. I was being beyond arrogant. "Light-slaying rain," Ku Yuanliang roared. He lunged. His sword blurred, creating hundreds of afterimages infused with sharp sword chi. It looked like a wall of lethal raindrops flying straight at me. The spectators were stunned. Most of them wouldn't have lasted 2 seconds against a move like that. But I didn't move. The people who had seen me fight Zhu Jingyi expected me to use that ghost-like movement technique again. They widened their eyes, waiting to see where I would reappear. They were disappointed. I stood my ground until the sword chi actually slammed into my chest. "Junior brother Lin, move," Wu Zongqing screamed. He had total faith in my offense. After all, I had taught him, but he didn't think anyone could take a hit like that unprotected. Even the best swordsman shouldn't try to block a blade with his bare chest. Ku Yuanliang was just as shocked. Was I unable to dodge? Was this all I had? Then, the world seemed to stop. The sword chi hit my body and simply vanished. It didn't cut me. It didn't even push me back. It disappeared as if it had never existed. "What? Where did my sword chi go?" Ku Yuanliang stared at me, his eyes bulging in disbelief. "I clearly hit you. What are you looking for?" I smiled. "Keep it coming." I was right. His cultivation was only at the first stage of the Sea of Wheels. His sword chi was weak, even weaker than the chaotic energy inside the sword tombs. My internal sword intent had swallowed it like a snack. "Damn you," Ku Yuanliang gritted his teeth. He didn't try to fire off more energy. If the chi didn't work, he would cut me down with cold steel. He swung his blade with everything he had. Clang! A dull thud echoed through the courtyard. Ku Yuanliang's sword struck home. His eyes widened in instant horror. He had hit my hand, but the blade didn't cut through. I had caught his sword with my bare palm. The disciples watching were stunned. They had seen me block Zhu Jingyi's heavy fist like this, but this was a sharp blade. They expected my fingers to fly off, yet I held the steel firmly. Wu Zongqing looked just as confused as the enemy. I was supposed to be a sword cultivator, but right now, I looked more like a physical body cultivator. As my skin made contact with the metal, fragments of memory flooded my mind. My understanding of the Luo Yu sword technique deepened instantly. I didn't do this on a whim. In the hellish training grounds of the Brahma sword seed, I had been hit thousands of times. Thanks to my 9 heavens demon subduing seal reaching the 3rd level, my physical toughness was already equal to a dedicated body cultivator of the same rank. A common spiritual sword held by someone like Ku Yuanliang didn't have the qualifications to wound me. "My turn," I said with a smile. I reached out and grabbed his shoulder. With a sudden twist of my hips, I slammed him toward the ground with every ounce of my strength. Ku Yuanliang tried to resist, but he couldn't break my grip. He must have realized too late that I wasn't just a swordsman. Thud! The ground shook. Ku Yuanliang's eyes rolled back into his head, and he went limp. I clapped the dust off my hands. A simple over-the-shoulder throw was always the most satisfying way to end things. "Junior brother Lin," Wu Zongqing stammered, approaching me cautiously. Did you switch to being a body cultivator? No, I replied, grinning. Don't you think this looks cooler? Wu Zongqing sighed, looking worried. Being cool is one thing, but we sword cultivators should focus on the heart of the blade. Distractions are dangerous. I won't let my sword skills lag behind, Brother Wu. Don't worry. Now let's move on. Who's 20th on the elite rankings? He looked at me like I was crazy. How far do you plan on going? Let's set a small goal, I said. Top 10 for now. I need a spot for the Wuji ancient ruins, and the top 10 gets me in automatically. Wu Zongqing let out a breath of relief. He told me that once you hit the top 50, there are no more spirit gathering realm disciples left. I was already the only one at rank 40. The top 10 were true monsters, geniuses with terrifying power. He thought I needed a few more years to bridge the gap. Sweeping the entire list shouldn't be that hard, I muttered. Junior brother, keep your voice down, Wu Zongqing hissed. This is Tianshan Peak. People here don't take kindly to that kind of talk. Sweeping the list? You think because you beat a few trash disciples, you're invincible? A cold, mocking voice drifted from the side. Wu Zongqing's face paled. That's Chen Xiong, rank 4 on the elite list. He's at the 4th stage of the Sea of Wheels and a saber cultivator. He's already touched the threshold of saber intent. I turned to look at Chen Xiong, a rank 4 saber cultivator who understood intent. Now that was an opponent worth my time. I let a sliver of my sword intent leak out. Chen Xiong's eyes narrowed. That level of intent, no wonder you're arrogant. You've reached the intent threshold too. Want to try it? I asked calmly. Your cultivation is too low, Chen Xiong said, his lip curling in disdain. It's enough to beat you, I countered. The atmosphere turned icy. The crowd was speechless. They had thought I was a body cultivator, but finding out I was a sword genius who mastered intent at the spirit-gathering realm changed everything. Watching me stand off against the rank 4 powerhouse felt surreal. They were both geniuses, but the gap in cultivation was massive, an entire realm and 4 sublevels. Chen Xiong, right? I stepped forward. Do you dare to fight? Junior brother, wait. You don't have enough points to challenge him yet, Wu Zongqing warned. Chen Xiong stepped into the clearing. I'll teach you a lesson. A sword that is too sharp breaks easily. Don't worry, I won't bully you. I'll suppress my cultivation to match yours. As for the ranking points, if you win, I'll handle the elders myself. The crowd cleared a space. Everyone started betting on the outcome. Most stood with Chen Xiong because they had seen his power, but others were curious. I hadn't even drawn my sword yet. If I won this, I would be the greatest genius the Sword Devil sect had seen in years. Chen Xiong adjusted his breathing, lowering his energy to the peak of the spirit-gathering realm. My saber is a top-tier spiritual weapon. Don't try to catch this one with your bare hands, or you'll lose them. You didn't need to suppress your cultivation, I said, ignoring the taunt. I could have beaten you at the 4th stage of the Sea of Wheels anyway. Talk is cheap, Chen Xiong growled. I finally reached for my hilt. My sword was only high grade, a full tier below his, but it didn't matter. I drew the blade slowly. Spark to prairie fire, I whispered. A scorching, red-hot aura erupted from my body. It felt like the heavy, suffocating heat right before a volcanic eruption. Wu Zongqing's eyes lit up. He knew what was coming. I swung. A beam of sword light flew out. It looked ordinary, but all the destructive energy was compressed inside. Good, Chen Xiong yelled. A massive saber shadow materialized behind him as he slashed downward, his blade glowing with a dark, eerie light. My blade collided with Chen Xiong's heavy saber light. But something was wrong. This wasn't just a simple strike. It was pure, concentrated sword intent. What? Chen Xiong cried out. A deafening boom echoed through the clearing. The force of the impact sent Chen Xiong stumbling back a dozen steps. His long saber vibrated violently in his grip, and blood began to seep from the webbing of his thumb. How? I asked calmly, not breaking my stance. I told you, there was no need to suppress your cultivation. Chen Xiong's gaze sharpened. He wasn't arrogant anymore. I didn't expect you to be this strong. Maybe I'm even stronger than you think, I replied. Chen Xiong gritted his teeth. He was clearly tired of my talk. You aren't the only one who has grasped an intent. He took a heavy step forward and swung his saber into the empty air. The massive shadow behind him merged into his blade, exploding with a cold, eerie light. A black, crescent-shaped blade of energy, nearly 30 feet long, tore through the air. The crowd gasped. Chen Xiong had mastered Saber Intent. This was his trump card. Usually, even experts in the late stages of the Sea of Wheels realm couldn't touch the level of intent these two were showing. Lin Xiao is a monster, someone whispered. But look at that attack. The black blade carved deep rifts into the ground as it rushed toward me. I didn't flinch. To me, it was just broken Saber Intent. Nothing more. I swung my sword. A piercing light shot toward the sky, surging like a great river. My sword intent slammed into his black blade with absolute resolve. Cracks spiderwebbed through his Saber Intent. Then, it shattered. The black energy exploded into harmless mist, but my sword light didn't stop. It tore through the debris and struck Chen Xiong's top-tier spiritual saber. Chen Xiong let out a pained groan. His arm shook so violently, he couldn't hold on. His weapon went flying. At the last microsecond, I flicked my wrist, redirecting the lethal beam away from his head and into the distant sky. Silence fell over the pavilion. Second level. Sword Intent, Chen Xiong muttered, his eyes downcast. I lose. He said it with total sincerity. His trump card was a first-level Saber Intent, but I had reached the second level. In the world of cultivation, that single step could take a normal person 10 years to climb. More importantly, he knew that if I hadn't turned my blade at the end, his head would have exploded. The crowd was buzzing. A two-hit fight. Nobody expected the fourth-ranked elite to fall that fast. Are you sure he's only in the spirit-gathering realm? Someone asked. Is he hiding his true power? Good match, I said. Chen Xiong was stubborn, but he had character. He never once released his suppressed cultivation during the fight, even when he was losing. If he had fought me with his full Sea of Wheels power, my second-level intent wouldn't have finished him so easily. I'll tell the elders about the ranking change, Chen Xiong said, looking at me. Don't get cocky, Lin Xiao. I'll be back to defeat you soon. He turned and left quickly. I didn't bother retorting. By the time we met again, we wouldn't even be on the same level anymore. I had secured the fourth spot on the elite rankings. Now, I needed to prepare for the upcoming ruins. Junior brother, that was incredible. Wu Zongqing ran up to me, beaming. You should keep going. You could take the #1 spot. This is enough for now, I said. By the way, do you know where I can find a high-level movement technique? Wu Zongqing thought for a moment. Since you're rank 4 now, you can enter the second floor of the hidden pavilion. Our sect's best movement skill is the Earth grade, shifting phantom step. I use it myself. I looked at him flatly. Is there anything better? He scratched his head. That's the best we have. I could ask my master, though. Don't worry about it, I said. I know who to ask. Where is the residence for the 4th rank? Wu Zongqing led me to a small, private building that used to belong to Chen Xiong. As we walked, the news of my victory was already spreading through the inner sect like wildfire. Spirit Gathering Realm and second-level Sword Intent were the only words anyone was talking about. After checking out the cultivation room in my new home, I headed straight back to the hidden pavilion. If I wanted to know about techniques, Elder Mu was the man to see. He was already waiting for me at the door. What do you want now, kid? Elder Mu chuckled. I heard you beat that old saber user's disciple. Not bad. Senior Chun was holding back? I said with a smile. If he used his full power, I might have needed a few more moves. Elder Mu rolled his eyes. I've seen people brag, but you're on another level. So, are you here to finally become my disciple? I'll pick a lucky day for the ceremony. He assumed Old Gung had given up on me since I had left the Vantion training early. Actually, Old Gung told me to give you a message, I said. Oh, is the old man finally admitting defeat? Mu laughed loudly. Tell me, what did he say? I mimicked Old Gung's grumpy voice perfectly. He said, In your dreams, Mu. Elder Mu's face froze. That old fox. Is he trying to cheat on our bet? I didn't explain. I just reached out my hand. What are you doing? He asked, confused. Old Gung said you should check for yourself. Elder Mu frowned and grabbed my wrist, sending a thread of spiritual sense into my body. His expression went through a rainbow of emotions, from confusion to shock, then to a pale, ghostly white. Are you even human? He whispered, pulling his hand back like he'd been burned. How is this possible in 8 days? How did you do it? I just blinked at him. Why is everyone calling me a monster? I told him about my 8 days of bitter cultivation. To reach that level with old Gung's broken technique, and to push my sword intent to the 3.5 level while still in the spirit-gathering realm. It was unheard of. I didn't believe you when you said you beat that boy easily, Mu muttered, looking at me like I was a freak of nature. Now, I believe you. Elder Mu shook his head, sighing like he'd lost all hope in the world. He looked at me, then at the ground, then back at me again. A kid who had only mastered 10% of a blade technique wouldn't stand a chance against me now. I had spent 8 days of brutal cultivation in the Vantion sword formation. In that time, I didn't just push my cultivation to the peak of the spirit-gathering realm. I had devoured enough sword chi to bring my sword intent to 35%. The more I practiced the heavenly great sword scripture, the deeper my connection to the blade became. Old Gung had definitely won this round of their little rivalry. Elder Mu grumbled, realizing he'd have to wait even longer to officially take me as his disciple. I decided to speak up. I told him that with my talent, I could easily learn 2 paths at once. The 9 nether-suppressing seal and the heavenly greatsword scripture actually worked well together. Mu wasn't happy about it, but he eventually gave in. He warned me that if he saw my body tempering falling behind my sword skills, he'd put a stop to it immediately. I just nodded and thanked him. He then asked if I was planning to head to the Wuji ruins to challenge the elite rankings. I told him I was. The ruins weren't particularly dangerous for someone at my level, but he had one strict warning. He told me to never, under any circumstances, go near Zhulong Lake. His eyes clouded with genuine fear when he mentioned it. He said even experts in the Xiandan realm, the stage far above mine, face certain death there. I promised him I'd stay away, but secretly, I was intrigued. If a place scared a Xiandan expert, it had to be hiding something incredible. Before I left, I remembered one more thing. I asked him if he knew where I could find a high-level movement technique. I needed speed. Mu scoffed at the idea. He told me that if I trained my body to the absolute limit, I wouldn't need a technique to be fast. He started explaining the path ahead of me. Above the Xiandan realm was the Drawing Peak realm. To reach it, a cultivator had to master at least 80% of an intent, whether it was sword, blade, or even elements like fire. I listened intently, then asked a simple question. I asked if mastering 2 different intents before reaching the Drawing Peak would make me stronger. Mu looked at me like I was dreaming. He said it was possible, but he had never heard of anyone actually doing it. Mastering 1 was hard enough. Who would have the time or the genius to master 2? I shrugged and muttered that it actually felt pretty easy to me. Elder Mu almost coughed up blood. He had been stuck in the late Xiandan realm for decades, and his own intent was only at 60%. Hearing a teenager call the hardest part of cultivation easy was a direct hit to his pride. He looked like he wanted to yell at me, but then he remembered my progress. 3.5 levels of sword intent at my age was unheard of. He just sat there, looking miserable. I realized I should probably leave before he actually exploded. But just as I turned to go, he stopped me. He told me that if I really wanted a top-tier movement technique, there was a way. He pulled out a jade slip and a piece of paper. He told me to head 300 miles north, past the Demon Forest, to the Luyun sect. They were the undisputed masters of speed in the Great Wei dynasty. He handed me a recommendation letter and a debt note addressed to their sect leader. I took them, feeling a bit surprised. Elder Mu really had connections everywhere. He had a mischievous glint in his eye that I didn't quite catch, but I was too excited to care. I thanked him sincerely. Even though I hadn't officially become his student, he was treating me like his own kin. He told me to hurry up, since the Wuji ruins would open in 10 days and the Luyun sect was on the way. As I prepared to leave, I asked one last thing. I asked if he had a flying boat or a spirit ark I could borrow to save time. Mu stared at me blankly. He had no idea what a flying boat even was. I realized then that this world might be different from the stories I'd read back home. If there were no flying ships, I'd have to find another way. I asked if he at least had a flying beast I could ride. I lowered my expectations and asked if he had a flying beast I could ride instead. Elder Mu's brow furrowed even deeper. He told me to stop dreaming and use my own 2 feet. He said I could fly once I reached the Black Core realm, but for now, I needed to be realistic. Our sect wasn't some beast-taming faction. Why would we keep flying creatures around? To eat them for dinner? With those parting words, he kicked me out. I left the Sword Devil sect immediately and began my journey toward the Luyan sect. Back at the pavilion, Elder Mu watched me walk away and muttered to himself. He said that since old Gung had given me a lucky break, he couldn't fall behind. He wondered if I'd be able to handle the gift he was sending me toward. I decided to head straight through the demon forest. It was a dangerous shortcut, but going around would take too long. If I cut through, I could reach the Luyan sect in 3 or 4 days, leaving plenty of time to reach the Wuji ruins. 2 days later, I was deep in the heart of the forest. A massive beast, nearly 4 meters long, stood before me. It was a dark tiger, a mid-stage sea-wheel realm monster. It was fast, powerful, and could double its strength when enraged. It let out a deafening roar and lunged. Its claws tore through the air, seemingly shredding my head to pieces. But it hit nothing but an afterimage. I reappeared a few feet away, my blade already in motion. A flash of sword light flickered, and the tiger's head slid from its shoulders. It was dead before it hit the ground. I walked over and began dismantling the carcass with practiced ease. I tossed the most valuable parts into my storage ring and kept moving. Mid-stage sea-wolf beasts were becoming too easy. I had the 3rd level of the 9 Serene Demon Seal and my 3.5 levels of Sword Intent. Nothing in this forest should have been able to stop me. Elder Mu had mentioned there were no Black Core Realm beasts in this area, so I wasn't worried. Even if I met something at the peak of the Sea-Will realm, I could always run. Half a day later, my ears twitched. I sensed movement. I instantly triggered my movement technique, leaving a blur behind. But for the first time, my trick failed. A massive gray shadow pounced with incredible speed. Sharp claws aimed straight for my skull. I reacted instinctively, activating the 9 Serene Demon Seal. A golden light erupted from my body as the blow landed. There was a loud, metallic thud. The impact sent me flying 15 meters back until I slammed into a thick tree. I cursed under my breath. That strength had to be at least peak Sea-Will realm. I looked up, narrowing my eyes at my attacker. It was a wind wolf. But that didn't make sense. Wind wolves usually capped out at the spirit gathering realm. Was this a mutation? The wolf stared at me, looking just as confused. It couldn't understand how a weak human had survived its killing blow. I didn't give it time to think. I gripped my sword and unleashed a wave of fiery sword chi. The wolf lowered its body and turned into a streak of gray lightning. It dodged my attack with terrifying agility. Its speed was actually higher than mine. We clashed again and again. After a dozen rounds, we were at a stalemate. The wolf's demonic aura grew thicker, its eyes turning a feral red. It was frustrated. It was stronger, yet it couldn't break my defense. I, on the other hand, was busy observing it. It looked like a normal wind wolf, but its power was off the charts. It was definitely a mutant. I decided it was time to end this. I focused my mind and unleashed a strike infused with my full sword intent. The blade light fell from the sky like a falling star, moving several times faster than before. The wolf's fur stood on end. It let out a terrified howl, a blood-red mist erupting from its skin. It didn't even try to fight. It turned and bolted. It knew its life was on the line. Even with its quick reflexes, my sword caught it. A scream echoed through the woods, leaving a spray of blood on the grass, but the wolf vanished into the brush. I stood there stunned. It actually got away? My full power strike hadn't killed it instantly. Its physical defense was insane. I hesitated for only a second before chasing after the blood trail. I wanted that wolf dead. If a beast reached the Black Core realm, it formed a demon core, a literal treasure. I wondered if this mutant had one. I followed the blood to a hidden cave. Inside, I found the wolf panting, its life fading. A massive gash ran from its shoulder to its waist. I was amazed it could run at all with an injury like that. But then I saw something that made my skin crawl and my eyes light up. The wolf was lapping up a liquid from a small puddle on the cave floor. As it drank, its wound began to knit back together at a visible speed. It was regenerating. Holy crap, I whispered. The wolf's head snapped toward me. I didn't wait. I swung my sword, pouring everything into one last sword-intent strike. I wasn't going to let it recover. The wolf tried to move, but it was too slow. Its head rolled across the floor. I exhaled, checking the area for other threats. Once I was sure it was safe, I ignored the wolf and walked toward the puddle. The liquid was milky white, glowing with a soft radiance. Even standing a meter away, I felt a rush of pure, concentrated spiritual energy. It was mixed with a strange green essence. My body began to ache with a primal hunger for it. I had no idea what this stuff was, but I knew I needed it. My eyes widened. If just smelling this liquid felt this intense, what would happen if I actually drank it? It all clicked. That wind wolf hadn't just mutated by chance. It had been feeding on this stuff. I looked up at the cave's ceiling and froze. 3 stalactites hung there, glowing with a divine radiance. Drip, a single white drop fell from the tip of the longest one, splashing into the puddle below. This had to be stone milk. It was a legendary essence formed by the natural rhythm of heaven and earth, packed with life force and spiritual energy. This stuff was incredibly rare. It took decades to grow a single centimeter. The 2 smaller ones were 30 centimeters long, but the one in the middle? It was over a meter. 1,000-year stone milk, I whispered. My heart hammered against my ribs. I didn't care if I was right or wrong about the name. If the leftover scraps could turn a common wolf into a mutant monster, the source was priceless. I leaped toward the ceiling, using the jagged walls for leverage. Carefully, I used my sword to carve the 3 stalactites from the rock and tuck them into my storage ring. I didn't stop there. I pulled out several jade bottles and scooped up every last drop of the liquid from the floor. Wasting this would be a sin. Finally, I looked at the wolf's carcass. This beast had been gorging itself on stone milk for who knows how long. I pulled a set of cooking tools from my ring. I used my fire sword technique to start a blaze and my Tianming sword technique to slice the meat. The steaks sizzled on the pan. Once they were medium rare, I took a bite. The meat was tender and melted on my tongue. Then it hit me. Boom. The moment the meat reached my stomach, it exploded into a wave of raw energy that surged through my limbs. I grinned. It was exactly as I thought. The wolf didn't know any cultivation methods, so it couldn't digest the stone milk properly. Its body had become a living vessel for all that unrefined power. I finished the steak and immediately began circulating the 9 nether demon seal. The effect of that one meal was better than a top-tier spirit pill. I spent the next hour refining the energy, then I cooked another piece. I spent the entire day in a cycle of eating, practicing, and eating again. I was halfway through the wolf when I heard faint voices from the cave entrance. Master Sister, I'm sure the wind wolf lives in here. It's definitely at the late stages of the spirit sea realm. A beast like that must have found some kind of treasure. My expression darkened. I stopped eating and listened. There's blood all over the trail, another voice said. The mutant must have lost a fight and crawled back here to heal. Let's move. With Master Sister here, we don't have to fear a wounded wolf. 4 women blurred into the cave. 3 wore green robes, and the one in the center wore purple. They were all stunning, but the woman in purple stood out. Her eyes were like cold stars, and she carried herself with an elegant, untouchable grace. I scanned them quickly. The 3 in green were at the 4th and 5th stages of the spirit sea realm. The purple-clothed leader, however, was at the 7th stage. 4 spirit sea cultivators, and I was trapped in a cave with them. They spotted me immediately. Their eyes darted from me to the half-eaten wolf carcass on the floor. Someone beat us to it, one of the green-robed girls hissed. Look at the blood. He just killed it. And he's eating it. When they realized I was only at the peak of the spirit-gathering realm, their posture relaxed. To them, I wasn't even a threat. I was just a fly that happened to find their meal first. You're late, I said, spitting a bone onto the floor. I kept my voice calm. I wasn't about to let a 7th-stage girl intimidate me. The women looked at each other, confused by my lack of fear. One of the green-robed girls stared at the ring on my finger. Master Sister, the air in here is thick with energy, but there's no treasure in sight. I bet he already took it. The woman in purple, Luo Yushang, stepped forward. We've been tracking this beast for days. If you found something, I suggest you hand it over. We're willing to split it with you. Her sisters bristled. Split it? Why? We found this place first. I was surprised. Luo Yushang wasn't lying. She was being remarkably fair for someone in a position of power. Most people in this world would have just killed me and looted my corpse. Before I could respond, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the tunnel. 8 or 9 men rushed in, surrounding all of us. "So this is where you were hiding, junior sister Yushang," a handsome young man said, a smug grin plastered on his face. The girls turned pale. "Sikong Hao? From the Xianing cult." "It's the little devil," one of the juniors whispered, her voice trembling. "I heard he reached the 8th stage of the Spirit Sea realm. That's higher than Master Sister." Luo Yushang's eyes turned to ice. "You followed us." "Followed? That's a harsh word," Sikong Hao laughed. "I just wanted to find a nice, quiet place where we could talk about becoming cultivation partners. I'll even visit your father tomorrow to propose. What do you think?" "Shut up," one of the green-robed girls snapped. "Our Master Sister would never be with someone like you." Crack. The sound of the slap echoed through the cave. Nobody even saw Sikong Hao move. The girl was sent flying, a bright red handprint burning on her cheek. "Sikong Hao," Luo Yushang shouted. "We aren't far from my sect's territory. You wouldn't dare." Luo Yushang scrambled to protect her fallen companion, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and defiance. She warned him that the Lu Yun sect wasn't far away and that his people would pay if they didn't leave. Sikong Hao just laughed harder. He told her he was certain her sect wouldn't arrive in time to save them. Then, he glanced at his men. He promised them they could take good care of the other 3 girls in green once he was finished. The men behind him grinned, their eyes crawling over the girls with disgusting intent. The 3 juniors turned deathly pale, too terrified to even speak. Sikong Hao turned his attention back to the cave. He took a deep breath, his eyes widening as he felt the thickness of the air. The spiritual energy here was 3 times denser than outside, almost like a high-grade gathering array. He knew there had to be a legendary treasure hidden somewhere nearby. Greed and excitement flickered in his gaze. He gave Luo Yushang an ultimatum. Either she handed over the goods, and they stayed gentle, or he would take what he wanted by force. The atmosphere turned heavy. I realized I was being ignored, so I decided to speak up. I asked them if they could just let me go while they handled their business. Every head in the cave snapped toward me. Sikong Hao looked at me like I was a piece of dirt stuck to his boot. To a man at his level, a mere spirit-gathering realm cultivator like me didn't even have the right to speak. I told him the truth, that I was just a passerby and didn't know these women at all. He didn't even blink. He just casually told his men to kill me. He said it with the same tone someone might use to ask what was for dinner. As soon as the words left his mouth, one of his lackeys sneered. The man was at the 2nd stage of the Wheel Sea realm, far above my supposed level. He drew his blade and swung it directly at my neck. Luo Yushang cried out, trying to move forward to stop him. She didn't think I deserved to die just for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But a wet, sickening thud cut her off. Before she could even take a step, the man who attacked me was sent flying backward at twice the speed he'd approached. He hit the cave wall with a bone-crunching impact. Everyone stared in shock. A sharp piece of bone was buried deep in his chest, right through his heart. His life force vanished before he even hit the ground. By the time his body slumped against the stone, he was already a corpse. I offered a small, apologetic smile. I told them I was sorry, that his move was so sudden I didn't have time to hold back. Then, I looked at the dead man and back at Sikong Hao. I had heard that the righteous sects paid a bounty for members of demonic cults at the Wheel Sea realm. I looked them right in the eye and asked exactly how much a head like his was worth.